Good evening. Time having arrived and a quorum being present, I call this budget hearing of the Brockton Finance Committee to order. Please rise, councilors, and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Councilors, before we begin, Ward 2 Councilor Maria Tavares, unfortunately, is unable to be with us tonight due to work circumstances. Mr. Clerk.
First department is Retirement Contributory. Jean Martineau, Director.
Good evening. Have a seat.
Right here. This is just a book for everyone that comes in case they need it.
So we moved the podium?
What's that?
We moved the podium, now we're in the hot seat.
For budgets, yes. But I'm here, right here with you, so you're only in half the hot seat.
Good evening. My name is Jean Martineau.
Yes.
So just as a brief introduction to the Brockton Retirement. Established in July 1, 1936, the Brockton Contributory Retirement System consists of approximately 1,400 retirees and over 3,000 active and inactive members. The city, the Brockton Housing Authority, the Brockton Area Transit, and the Brockton Redevelopment Authority are all contributing units to the system. Mass General Law, Chapter 32 mandates that your Board of Trustees shall consist of 5 members. 2 are elected by the membership, 2 are appointed by the mayor, and the 5th member shall be an independent member of the system. That member is appointed by the other 4 members of the board. It is the board's duty to provide secure retirement benefits to our pensioners and beneficiaries through efficient and careful oversight of investment practices. The daily operations of the office are administered by the executive director and the staff. The trustees meet monthly so that they may vote on matters of policy and continue to be updated on topics that come before the board. We are committed to earning and maintaining the trust of our participants through quality customer service and by protecting future benefits in compliance with Mass General Law, Chapter 32, 840 CMR, and also case law. The request that comes before you tonight is an assessment, which is developed by the fund's actuary and approved by the Public Employee Retirement Administration Commission, PERAC, the state's regulatory authority. The request for FY 2024 is $14,354,019.
Questions, councilors? Thank you very much for coming, Ms. Martineau. Thank you.
For having me.
Have a good evening.
Thank you, you too.
Madam Clerk?
Next, Assessors. Invited John O'Donnell, Chairman, Board of Assessors.
Did you hear her? What she said? No, go ahead.
Good evening, councilors.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I have a short statement. The Assessor's Office has reviewed and granted 785 personal exemptions, tax deferrals, and hardships. Administrated over 72,200 motor vehicle excise tax bills. Reviewed and granted over 900 excise right there. Abatement applications. Received and reviewed 155 residential and commercial abatement applications. Assessors attended a monthly Council on Aging meeting in February and conducted a workshop on senior and veteran exemptions. The meeting was very successful, and a number of seniors applied for the first time. The office had 2 longtime employees retire in January and February. One position was filled in February, and the other position should be filled by the end of June. The overall 2024 budget has decreased by 7.4%. I'll answer any questions you may have.
Councilor Thompson, good evening.
Good evening. Sorry, you caught me mid-chew. Good evening, Mr. O'Donnell. I believe you just mentioned some numbers, and I just didn't hear them. I know we amended both the senior tax work income limit and the senior tax exemption. How many has What number of seniors has signed up for the work program, do you know?
I don't know, that's Janice handles that and Kelly, but I can find out for you. We get it after the fact. We process the whole,
Okay, so you're not the one who does the, signs them up, and that's out of the Council on Aging?
council
Okay.
agent or Kelly.
Okay.
VA, Veterans agent.
All right, I appreciate that, thank you.
Thank you. Counselor D'Agostino.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Just one question. The administrative assistant one, you mentioned that position and that vacancy, rather. How long has that been vacant?
Well, I had a retiree, so it's worked down to, it's been vacant since February. But we promoted.
Okay, so this is newly vacant.
No, it's not, it's an existing job that we're just getting to fill.
Right, but it was recently, like the person who was in
yeah.
this.
Yes, they got promoted.
Let me ask you a different way. This wasn't vacant in last year's budget?
No,
Thank you. Thank you very much.
you're welcome.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. O'Donnell, good evening. Talk to us about new growth. Talk to us about new growth and, get out your crystal ball. What do you think? Because the last couple of years, we have a lot of new growth.
We've exceeded, yeah.
That's right.
The personal property company, RRC, who does our personal property valuations, they were in the other day. It's basically how it works. They do all the work now for 24. So we're going to have a lot of, we typically have between 8 and 900 million tax dollars in new growth in personal property, and they say we should meet it or exceed it.
Wow.
So, we have a lot of residential new growth and commercial. We estimate at 1.7 million, and we typically exceed what we estimate. Last year was 2.2, so hopefully we're right on the same number.
So you estimate 1.7, last year was 2.2.
Yes.
So it's coming down a little bit.
No, we'll exceed it. We always estimate low.
If I could follow on,
Good evening.
Madam Chairman, John is absolutely correct. This is a good adjunct to the discussion we had last night about our conservative revenue projections. And each year I meet with John and we talk about the potential new growth and always scale that back intentionally, because if we overestimate new growth and don't reach that estimate, then that counts against our free cash calculation. So like with the local receipts, we tend to be very conservative in our projections for that number by design so that we do exceed it and that money goes to free cash.
Do you foresee this continuing next year?
Yes, we got some large industrial buildings that will come online. Yes, it will.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Someone else? Counselor Farwell.
Mr. O'Donnell, when the budget kicks in on July 1st, at what point do you start looking at the trends in property tax value, property values, i.e. residential, commercial? Because, and the reason I ask that is my concern is that as we see a great increase in property values, that may not be offset by the tax per thousand valuation. And while some people like to see their property values go up, for others it means a much larger tax bill. And you can, I'm always fearful we'll push people away from their homes.
Yeah, well, we do it all the time. We look at values all the time. Like I said to the other day in that tax, we're doing the first quarter tax bill on Thursday. So tomorrow we have the cutoff. We've done a lot of the new construction, additions, people remodeling. We're capturing that value now, so it's going to be spread over four bills instead of 2 bills. So we've probably looked at 1,400 parcels just in the last 4 months.
What do you see?
The values, the sales are slow, but the values are still increasing. I mean, a Campanelli Ranch sold for $575,000.
Last question, do you still share the view that we need to expand our commercial base because otherwise we're skewing the property tax burden over to homeowners?
Yeah, it'll happen again this year. Our commercial value will drop again this year. Residential will drop, but, our total value last year was 11.8 1 billion?
Billion.
Yeah, 11.1 billion. It'll be close to 12 billion.
All right, well, that's for another time. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. O'Donnell, just a quick question and clarification. What's the difference between real estate taxes and personal property taxes?
Personal property taxes are only applied to businesses. So it's a tax, it's a commercial tax. It's applied to certain businesses are exempt, like manufacturers be exempt. We receive I think it's almost 70% of our personal property tax from National Grid, Eversource, telephone companies. So there's 4 or 5 Algonquin pipeline, because all their pipes, all that stuff's taxed, wires, poles.
And that's the difference between commercial,
Yeah.
industrial, residence, and then...
Then personal property, it's another class.
Yeah, because that often comes up, and for some odd reason, at least some of us are kind of hard, find it hard to explain the difference between the two, so thank you for clarifying that. Thank you,
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you.
O'Donnell.
Thank you.
Next department, treasurer, invited Martin Brophy, treasurer.
Good evening, councilors.
Good evening.
I actually have 2 offices to talk about. As far as the treasurer's office, our main role is to take in money from all the other departments, invest it, try and earn as much as we can on the investments, and then disperse the money through payrolls and AP. This year, there were probably easily over 200 payrolls that were all paid on time, and basically all the AP vendors, there's a weekly run that can basically have 700 or 800 payments easily that have also been paid on time. We also, my role there is to actually borrow money, and for this year we did the public safety building. That was our main borrowing, and we just had a sale on a temporary borrowing for some of the school projects, and that actually came in with a 3.5% interest rate. So in the days of minimal interest, the feds have raised the borrowing rates, but as far as our investment rate, we got some incredible rates on money that we could, and the investment, as of now, investment income is over $2.5 million. That's as high as it's been in many years. We actually used some CD rates that brought us in some 4 or 5% interest rate, which were, it was 0.05 interest rate not too long ago. As far as the collector's office, we have dealt with over 350,000 bills this year between real estate, personal property, motor vehicle excise, boat excise, water, sewer, trash, stormwater, police detail, and vacant abandoned. We've taken in between principal and interest over $220 million and still have a water bill that's halfway through, when it can be paid, which has been extended till the end of the month. I'd like to clarify my role in the billing process, though. As collector, I do not create a bill. I cannot change a bill. I am given those 350,000 bills from other departments, the real estate, personal property, excise from the Assessors office, and the water and stormwater from DPW. They are the only ones that can change those bills. If someone feels their bill is too high or their real estate bill is too high, they come to my office thinking we're the ones who can actually do it, but we kind of gracefully sent them to the correct department. And it's, the phones start ringing off the hook with new bills on the street, but again, half the time we're answering questions about payments, but about the bill itself, we usually have to pass that along to another department. As far as the budget, it's basically, it drops due to Medicare tax cut. The only increase is in personal service. And there is one vacant position that was filled back in April. So that is no longer a vacant position. And I'll take any questions.
Councilors? Councilor Farwell.
Good evening, Mr. Brophy.
Good evening.
I think it's very fair to say that you don't generate the bills. However, do we have a review and sign off by a department before you would send those bills out?
Yes, that's actually, the real estate bills are approved by the assessors. I review them and approved by the assessors, and the DPW, it's the commissioner.
Okay, so,
And excise bills, actually, the information comes from the state. That is really turned over to the city by the state. We don't create the value of the vehicle. That all comes from the Registry of Motor Vehicles.
but let's say there's an error on a water, stormwater, bill. Stormwater being one of my most favorite topics lately. Someone would have to sign telling you those bills are good to go, so that if there is an error on them, we didn't do something that we should have, it would go back to the person that authorized you to send the bill out?
Correct.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilors? Councilor D'Agostino.
Just out of curiosity on this one, under debt service and the long-term interest, there's a significant change. I assume that's the
another-
public
actually,
safety building?
That's next. That's the next category.
Oh,
Treasurer's debt.
sorry, right.
Patience. Patience. Anyone else? I have a question for you, Mr.
Sure.
Brophy. I'm looking at your objectives in this year's budget book. What's number one? They're all 2s and 3s.
Oh, that is actually the city objective. As numbered in my listing, that's my first goal. And basically, I think at the beginning of the budget, there are city objectives.
Okay.
So, Madam Chairman, those just link the departmental goals back to the overall city goals.
Okay.
So the fact that, say, protect and maximize the city's funds and investments links to city goal number 2, which is earlier in the book.
Right. Okay. Now, I thought your department's goal would have been show you the money. Thank you. Anyone else? Well, thank you for that presentation. We'll move on to our next one.
Treasurer's Debt Service, invited Marty Brophy, Treasurer.
I'll take any questions on this. This is pretty well set in stone based on our borrowings.
Councilor D'Agostino?
Okay, I hope I can ask now. I assume the difference in debt service and long-term interest is the public safety building?
Correct.
All right, that's all I wanted to confirm. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
Thank you, Madam President.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Brophy.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Fire Department, invited Brian Ardelli, Fire Chief.
Good evening, Chief Nardelli.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Good evening, councilors. Thank you for having me. If you don't mind, I'll just, if you don't mind indulging me for a minute, I'll go through a couple of things. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the mayor, CFO Clarkson, his staff, and obviously all of you. You make my job a lot easier when I know I can come to you, and if I have a good explanation for what I'm trying to accomplish, we can work through it, however that may be. I really want to thank the brave men and women of the Brockton Fire Department, whether that be from Suzanne, Laureen, and Melanie that work in my office, to my command staff. One of them tonight is Deputy Chief DePasquale, who's here with me, that goes through the budget regularly with me. to the captains and lieutenants that ride the trucks and the firefighters' boots on the ground. They do an amazing job every day, and I think I told you the first night I stepped in here when I was getting appointed, is that I have a front row seat for the greatest show on earth. These folks put their lives, their credibility, their hard work, their blood, sweat, and tears on the line every day that they arrive to work, and working days and nights to protect the residents of the city. If I could just talk about a couple of things that we've been able to accomplish in the last year. I know I came to you back in probably in the winter time, I'm not sure exactly the month, and we were accepting the lithium-ion battery equipment grant from the Department of Fire Services Safety and Equipment Grant. I can honestly say tonight that we've worked that into a credible success, as we have a standard operating guideline. We have training throughout the entire department. We actually have departments calling us and seeing how we're doing it, and we have the equipment from the state. We were the only department in the Commonwealth that applied for this equipment, and I think it shows now in how we're handling those incidents. One of the things that I think has been most useful with this entire process is we've created a great collaboration with Pat Hill in the DPW, along with Pat Sullivan and Ernie Bethany and his recycling department. We don't have the ability, we mitigate a hazard. And you have to understand, we don't clean up a hazard. That's not for us to do. We can't bill for that. That's just not how the fire service works. So we have had some great discussions, and it's worked out fabulous in a few of the incidents we've had, where we have been able to actually mitigate the hazard, get in touch with recycling, and they've been able to then come and take it. We have a recycling process. Then they're actually able to charge after the fact for being able to remove that. So it's been a great work within the city without having to deal with an outside entity. A couple other things. We finished the projected modeling program that I worked with CFO Clarkson on in trying to, if we had to replace Station 3, which wasn't one of our more aging stations, it's not strategically placed, I think, the way most chiefs in the last 20 years, 30 years have probably wanted it. But what we did is we brought in JB Consulting. They were able to take a look at it and see where we could move that station if we needed to that would be the most useful. One of our furthest response times is to the North Pearl Street, Oak Street extension area. And I think what the projected modeling, which we always thought was taking that station and moving it down Oak Street. There's no plans in the works right now, but I wanted to have something in the queue. In case we needed it. One of the things that FEMA has done over the years with their assistance to firefighter grants and their SAFER grants, like we've been very successful with, they're actually working to try to do one with fire stations. I don't know where it stands. It died in committee last year. It never made it to the floor. But one of the things that would be nice if we were able to gain some of that grant money. Deputy Chief Albanese has done an incredible job with the grants, and if anyone can do it, he can, to try to potentially replace that station. But we have a strategic plan in place if that money does come available. Not shovel ready, obviously, but we know where strategically it would be best suited. If you remember last year, I came to you and asked you for a third electrician. I can come back and say we've successfully hired that electrician. He's been on the job about 8 months now. He is an incredible asset to the entire signal division. He's an experienced journeyman electrician that has worked great with the other two the other signal maintainer and the working foreman signal maintainer. We've been able to get a ton more work done. Stuff that kind of goes by the wayside. The simple things of painting and cleaning up and repairing street boxes that are so critical to this community. I can state that we've had 53 calls to street boxes in the city of Brockton in this last year that have resulted in either fire, car accident, or a serious medical emergency. So those are an incredible asset that are out there, but without the signal division to be able to work to maintain those on a regular basis, if the system doesn't work, and we've seen in many communities, they've let the system fall apart, and it has really hurt the community. And a good friend of mine, the commissioner of Springfield, B.J. Calvi, he said that they took their system out years ago, and he credits deaths to not having that system in place, especially with the immigrant population that they have, people that have come here that haven't been able to speak English, and they know if they pull that, fire department's going to show up. So it's a very valuable asset, and it's nice to be able to, we can keep it in service, keep it maintained well. To that point with the signal division, one of the things that I came also to you with last year is to add some money into that signal budget for buying equipment. I can come to you today and say that we've been able to redo 4 intersections. We've been able to buy an incredible amount of wire and stuff that we've needed over the years that we never really had a line item for, that now we're able to actually buy posts and mast arms and different things of that nature that we weren't able to purchase necessarily unless we got insurance reimbursement on, because it never really had a line item. So now we've been able to kind of get ahead of the game on that and hopefully make our intersections a little bit safer. Repairs and replacements, some of the work we've done, we had a 12 years ago, we had a floor at Campello Station tested, and we found that it was covered in asbestos. I worked this year with Troy and Jim Pluff, the Commissioner of Buildings. We were able to get that taken out just about 4 short months ago, and we're in the process of redoing that floor. We've been able to replace 2 roofs, one at Station 6, and we're in the process of getting one at Station 2 repaired. One of the things that I'm proud of that we're finally moving forwards on, the world of fire dynamics, and if you're not in this world, and I apologize if I'm going to bore you with this, but the world of fire dynamics and what's burning in a residential or commercial, especially residential houses nowadays, has changed dramatically. For example, what would have been burning in my grandmother's house was probably burning at 7,000 BTUs per cubic foot. That doesn't mean anything until you hear nowadays everything that's burning in anyone's homes with all the amenities that we have is burning at 17 to 20,000 BTUs per cubic foot. Well, to put that in perspective, gasoline burns at 20,000 BTUs per cubic foot. Why is this important? This year, through my operating budget, I was able to buy through a lot of my equipment. We were able to change the way we operate with our nozzles, and they're on order now. We do not have them yet, obviously, because of backlogs. But some of the United Laboratories and NIST studies, the National Institute of Science and Technology, have shown that solid bore nozzles have made a big change in that. And this year, we're able to purchase all of those that are actually going to give us much more bang for our buck, not only in the way the water is deployed, but the gallonage that's put out on a fire. So I think it's really important to understand the benefit to the residents and to the safety of the firefighters that are fighting those fires with that. All of you should have received an invite, and I'd love to see you there if you can make it on June 21st. At 10 a.m., we are putting a 10th company back in service in the city of Brockton. That has not been the case since 1991 when we laid off 32 firefighters. This is a monumental day for the city that we're able to get back up to the staffing that we're at. A lot of this is in part because of the SAFER grant is putting us in this position, which Troy worked with us diligently along with Deputy Chief Albanese and again, Deputy Chief DePasquale. We've spearheaded a project that we got the rescue, we got the actual truck for, through an AFG grant through FEMA. Now we've got the staffing through FEMA. We've actually bought a lot of the equipment over the years that's going on that truck through a FEMA grant. So we've gotten a lot of bang for our buck out of the federal government to get this back in service. And the last piece of the puzzle were those 16 young firefighters you saw graduate last Friday. So we're working diligently to get that done. This is a monumental day. Like I said, we've evolved this department. I could have put a fire engine, just an engine, back in service, like Engine Company 1 was years ago. But the fire service has evolved, and the Brockton Fire Department has evolved with it, and that's what we're trying to continue. Civil service, I know you've heard we talk about this at a lot of the meetings, and I know you heard a lot, very difficult in hiring. One of the things that we did the last 2 years, I think I was here a month and we took over, we had seen that the numbers in taking the fire civil service test was down, especially with residents in the city of Brockton. Unknown why, I wasn't in that role before, but we had an open house. We were the only community in the Commonwealth that had an open house with civil service. Civil service actually came out to be at our open house to talk to people, and they tried to push some other departments to do it. I don't know what kind of success they had. The numbers in the city of Brockton are up 18% over the last 2 years taking that exam, so I think that's shown some positive. One of the real interesting parts, though, the first open house we held, 2 kids that really didn't know if they had interest in the fire service just graduated last Friday from the Brockton Fire Academy. So that's a big win to get those people in capture. Again, civil service is all about city jobs for city kids, and I think we've been doing a pretty decent job at that. You allowed us last year to purchase a new Squad A and 2 new ladder trucks. They are still on order. I'm grateful that the city allowed me to do it when they did. I had a 2-year ramp-up time to get those trucks once we ordered them. Right now, if I was to go to Pierce Manufacturing in Appleton, Wisconsin, and ask them, I needed to order the same trucks, they'd tell me 4 years. So we got a little bit ahead of the curve, which is nice. The backlog on fire apparatus, even worse, ambulances, which we don't have to deal with as much, the backlog on fire apparatus is incredible right now. So I think it's important that we did it when we did, and I appreciate the help with that. One thing I want to point out that's near and dear to my heart that is in my budget, that's a new item that you will see. I put in, and speaking with the mayor and speaking with the CFO, very important, we put in an $81,000 line item for cancer screening and testing. If you see, you watch the news, you watch anything, PFAS and the toxins that firefighters are taking in, not just in their gear, but also in the fires and the toxic environments we are in. This will allow each member to be tested with an ultrasound or what's called a gallery test, but they would also have to pay a portion of that. It gives about $350 per member to be able to get this testing done. Is it great for the firefighters? Absolutely. I want to make sure we keep our members healthy and safe. But even long-term, through the financial prospect of this, trying to treat a firefighter that has cancer is much more costly than it ever would be to try to catch those things early. And this hits near and dear to my heart. So I think it's important. But outside of that, I have a number of other things I could talk about, but I don't want to bore you all evening, and I know there's a lot of people that have to come up here tonight. One of the things, real quick, though, we have 2 open positions we're currently filling right now as firefighters, 2 retirements, and we have 2 fire alarm operators positions. We have the backgrounds done. We've actually tendered offers to 2 candidates for fire alarm operators. We just received the packets back for the firefighters, and we'll hopefully beginning interviews within the next couple of weeks. If there's nothing else, I would take any questions.
Councilor Minichiello.
Good evening, Chief. How are you?
Good evening.
So under medical, I assume that's the 81,000, add that to the 16, and we come to the 97?
Yes. Correct.
Okay. I was going to ask that question, but you answered it. That's a great investment. I mean, it's amazing how you found out, or we find out, that some of the safety equipment that you're wearing can be causing medical issues. I mean, I find that astounding.
I'll share something with you that I haven't shared with many. And it's not, 2 months after I sat before you when I was appointed, I had an increase in my PSA. Not a big deal. I was 49 years old. The only reason I had gotten that test was because I went to a doctor by the name of Michael Hamrock, who's a retired Boston firefighter who went to med school. He would write it up so that I could get that test. You're not supposed to get a PSA done until you're 50 years old. Come to find out, I found out I had prostate cancer. Treated, fine, everything's good, didn't make a big deal about it. But the importance of this, like I said, is very near to my heart, simply because I could have a 46-year-old guy on the job. I could have a 40-year-old woman with another type of cancer that could have this. If these members aren't getting tested after the toxins, especially now, I talked about this lithium-ion battery situation, this stuff, we don't even know what's in these batteries. Right. And this whole thing is really burgeoning industry.
Oh, yeah, no. And as we said, they've taken down UPS planes.
Sorry?
Lithium batteries have taken down UPS planes.
Absolutely.
In the Middle East. I mean,
Yep.
So you're right. You don't know what these things are capable of. They burn so hot. Once they start, forget about it. You know?
Absolutely.
So, well, I'm glad you're doing that, to be proactive. Obviously, our firefighters are front lines, and they smell whatever's burning. They absorb whatever they're exposed to. So I'm definitely all for that increase in testing. No further questions. Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it.
Councilor Mendez.
Hello.
Hey, Councilor, how are you?
Could you just explain the difference between the premium pay and unique pay?
Okay, so premium pay is pay for a member that works a holiday. So this coming Monday is Juneteenth. If you are working that day, you get paid for the holiday through the collective bargaining agreement. Unique pay is separate. Unique pay is actually pay only for firefighters, no one above the rank of firefighter, and it's for duties they perform when not being supervised.
The other question that I have is regarding EMT payments. Do we get any of that reimbursed?
So the EMT pay is what they get paid for having it. So they get it's a contractual agreement. So what happens is if they become an EMT, an EMT intermediate, or paramedic, it's a part of their salary that it helps us on the fire ground in assessment of patients and taking care of patients. So it's a payment that we're paying our members for being a paramedic or being an EMT or being an intermediate.
Okay, I understand now the difference. I was confused. I thought we were paying the EMT, but now it makes sense. So these are the firefighters. They're also
Correct. That's correct.
That makes a little bit more sense. As to your overtime, what is the year-to-date to this point for the overtime? Because your department, I believe, is a little bit more staffed than the police department. The police department, they're
Understood.
always...
So we've expended our funds in the 870. If you remember correctly, I came back because I had a bunch of injuries that people had gone out from the many fires we've had. You know, I think one of the things that's interesting is we will have a fire. You know, we had the one over Bud's Variety on Warren Avenue, then we had the one on South Street. I've had 4 guys go out with significant injuries, shoulder injuries, different things of that nature. That bumps up the amount now to staff. So I came to you with a transfer about a month and a half ago, moving money from within my own budget. With 300, I think today I don't have the ESIM in front of me, but I think I've expended close to 100,000 of that already in the last month and a half since I came to you. So we used our allotted. Then I had money that I knew was not going to be used, that I could come back to you to ask you to transfer.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Rodriguez?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief, just a couple of things. Well, first of all, I want to thank you and congratulate you at the same time for your efforts to diversify the fire department. Today, there's more multilingual firefighters in our city than ever in the entire history of our city, and that's all to the work that you've put into it to do that, so we really appreciate that. In terms of a question, why isn't there a budget line item for the pipes and drums when they basically do a vital and a phenomenal job in promoting the department? Because I see you have a line item for the honor guard, but you do not have one for pipes and drums. And why would we not throw some funds into that, just to, since they're representing the fire department everywhere they go. I think it would be significant just to have something in the budget itself to basically send the message that we appreciate the work that they do.
Understood. I agree. Peter Reardon, who you know probably very well, Peter Reardon runs the pipes and drums. They've always remained a separate entity. The actual honor guard is run by the union with my oversight. So the funds that you see that are in the budget for the honor guard for uniforms, that is a collective bargaining agreement. That's through collective bargaining in the union. I think because the pipes and drums are a separate entity, and I don't know the law on that. I don't know how that would work. I'm not sure if the CFO was. They use the name of the Brockton Firefighters Pipes and Drums, but they're a separate entity. They're attached to us, but they have no affiliation directly with the department in that regard. So because it's a collective bargaining agreement with the honor guard, we're able to set up a fund through that collective bargaining and a line item in here. The pipes and drums are separate. Trust me, I would love to be able to do that. I don't think legally we would be able to do that, Troy. I'm not sure.
I'm just saying, we provide grants to a variety of organizations, a variety of entities out there. I mean, we're spending $100,000 in tourism, and if you've got a group of people that go out and promote this city on a regular basis, I don't see why that they couldn't get some sort of, stipend, something from within the city budget to say, hey, when they're going up there, they're actually going out as the Brockton, pipes and drums. I mean, when they started out, you know how I felt about the whole thing.
Yep. I appreciate them every day, and I can agree with that. Obviously I would be more than happy to try to figure something out on that behalf, because I would love to. I think they're a great entity for the city. They do so much for the city.
I think, Councilor, that the city could most certainly support their efforts financially, because as the chief described, they're a separate entity. Any payments on their behalf or to them would have to conform to any procurement laws, but say without any sort of bid process, the direct payment for goods or services could not exceed $10,000 in a fiscal year. But that's the only impediment that I see to supporting them. So it's certainly something that the chief and I can look into together.
I like to see that only because I remember back in 1999, we went to Louisville, Kentucky to compete on the All-American City, and we were the leading contenders until Worcester showed up with their pipes and drums.
We're better than them.
And then we lost because they could only do one per state. Worcester got it. So it's always been one of those things that I feel that, especially now that we do have one in the work that they actually do to promote the department, that, I mean, we provide funds to the Veterans Council in the sense to put on, you know, parades and some of the other things that they do. So I don't see why we can't provide some funds within the law, within the limits of the law, but provide them something so that they would feel somehow appreciated by the city that they're actually representing, because it does say Brockton on it. So,
Understood.
and if they're doing that, I'd like to see that happen.
Okay, I can work with the CFO, we can work with Peter and see how we might be able to do something like that.
All right, thank you. Thank you for all the work that you do. Thank you, Madam.
Absolutely.
Madam Chair, thank you.
Councilor Farwell.
Chief, you and I spoke. Will this budget allow us to add positions? Or just fill retirement?
Through attrition, it will. Right now, through attrition, it will, yes. I'll tell you right now, Counselor, I am in a very good place in regards to, I'm never in a great enough place for staffing, you know that. I would take 1 million firefighters, but I think, you know, I've worked with the CFO in the past where I see people that are going to be retiring. We try to work it out. I know it came up last night with Chief Perez about that in regards to, you know, maybe hiring ahead of time. I've worked with Troy in the past with that to try to make that happen, to try, because, you know, we run our own academies, we run our own drill schools, so I like to be able to get enough people in there at one time. So most of these positions this year will go through attrition. I'll be quite honest with you, after getting the SAFER grant and being able to fill to where I am, I quite honestly didn't want to be greedy, but I would be more than happy next year to put in for extra positions if that's something that the council would be obliged to, if we can work that out with the CFO, because I'm always looking to up staff. This is a staffing heavy job. The amount of fires we've had in this last year, I can give you numbers. Obviously, you know about the 110 alarm fire we had at the hospital. But when you look at that, the numbers, 110 alarm, 18 second alarms, 5 third alarms, 2 fifths alarms, and 28 working fires. That doesn't include what we call the 111s, which are actually fires that don't actually even go to a working fire, but we contain them with the first due assignment. Those numbers are through the extensively higher than they've been in the last number of years. And this is a labor-intensive job. I mean, this is real. Like I said, I have the front seat for the greatest show on earth. I get to, I'm commanding the fire, but I get to watch people do incredible things every day and work hard. I mean, if you've never been in turnout gear or fire gear, and to be able to go into a building and go through 4 bottles, that's how we usually call it, the packs we wear on our back, come out, get changed a bottle, 4 and 5 bottles, and remaining in an offensive attack the entire time. That's extenuatingly aggressive, which is good. That's what we want. Because, you know, I was speaking to the people at Bud's Variety. They're going to rebuild that house. You know, the house next door to the unfortunate one that burned down on South Street, they'll be able to, that's not a total loss. But that's because of the aggressiveness, and aggressiveness comes with staffing. So with more staffing, we can be more aggressive. And you know, it helps our ISO rating as well. You know, we're always on the bubble with the ISO rating because of the way, you know, we can't qualify for certain things. We don't have bodies of water. We don't have things like that. So there's points we miss out on the ISO. We are an ISO Class 1, and we have been for about, 8 years now. 7 years now, and we just came up for our new classification. We're always right on that bubble because we can't, but staffing are those things that can always throw us over. And the important part about the ISO is, ISO, not only is it a pride factor for the city of Brockton, there aren't a lot of Class 1s out there, but a big component of this is the fact that as an ISO Class 1, that turns into real dollars to the homeowners in the city and their insurance rates. So if our ISO rates change, it can only go down from where we are because we're Class 1. If that changes the insurance rates for our homeowners. By being a Class 1, it actually lowers their homeowners insurance rates, which is incredible. For a city of Brockton, when you look back and you look at, 32 years ago, the city was in, to be able to build back from that to be a Class 1 is incredible. And that's not me, that's the people before me and the people I have currently with me.
Okay, so next fiscal year, the upcoming fiscal year, we're fine.
Correct.
Then we'll take a peek at the next.
Absolutely, yeah. I can have Trey and I talk about this on a regular basis, where we can add new positions, how we can do it in the budget. This year, though, we really hit a home run with the SAFER grant, and we're not paying for it right now, but we could look at even moving further forward than that. That would be spectacular.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you,
you,
Madam Chair.
Thank you. The SAFER grant is for 3 years.
That's correct, Council, yep.
So when do we start looking for more money?
You mean when it runs out?
Yes.
Be March 15th of 2026.
Right.
Was when we'd pick up the full bill. Remember how the SAFER grant works? I know we talked about it before. The FEMA has actually gotten rid of all of the $4.7 million for no other expense on that, which was spectacular. That covers, it doesn't cover their turnout gear, it doesn't cover, so there was a lot of expenses in my operating budget this year that I had to take up. Now I've got to get them second sets of gear next year, so you see those things in that. But the important part of that is we got those bodies up front, and it's going to make a world of difference.
Does that also fund their benefits?
It funds everything but, yes, I'm sorry. It funds all their benefits, health insurance, all those different things that they're going to get, including their salaries, correct?
So when do you start worrying about how you're going to be able to afford them when the SAFER grant ends?
So Troy and I have talked about that, and I think, we've talked about the growth in the city and where we're going to be in 3 years compared to now, and I think that will hopefully get us on an upswing.
We have high hopes for that growth, Mr. O'Donnell. Anyone else? Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you, councilors. I appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Parks Commission invited Tim Carpenter, Superintendent of Parks.
Good evening, Mr. Carpenter.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Good evening, councilors. Even though Clerk Cruz indicated last night that thanking of staff can be an irritant, and even though I can feel the glare of those yet to come before you, I would be remiss if I did not take some time to publicly thank my staff. The tight ship that is the Parks office is due to in large part to my administrative assistant, Renee Brown, and I thank her very much. The staff at the Park Department, led by Russ Muniz, entering his 55th year of service to the City of Brockton, have often gone above and beyond in their efforts to maintain the growing number of properties overseen by the Park Department. They go about their work despite being understaffed with an eye to quality and productivity, often tasked with uncomfortable duties, and in potentially dangerous situations, they perform their duties with dignity and humanity. The staff of the Park Department assigned to DW Field Golf Course continue to provide conditions that rival private clubs with larger budgets and greater staff numbers. While the Pro Shop is the smiling face seen by all golfers, the ground staff makes our golf course shine and draws golfers of all abilities and backgrounds to its fairways. It is in no small part due to their knowledge and hard work that the golf season of 2022 was the most successful year in the history of the golf course, with over 31,000 rounds being played and a gross revenue of $1,634,717. In the current fiscal year, the gross revenue of the golf course is $1,441,567, exceeding that of last year for the same time period by over $150,000. Numbers like these would not be possible without a golf course in great condition. We look forward to the various improvements to parks throughout the city utilizing ARPA funds. Expected this process will begin in the short future. The long overdue reconstruction of the Cosgrove Pool is set to begin this summer, and I'm excited to see the end result. The Parks Department is also working on an exciting project in conjunction with the Wildlands Trust, the Conway School, and the town of Avon to develop a master plan for DW Field Park. This master plan will allow us to seek future grants and to see some of these great plans come to fruition. Councilors, the budget request you see before you does have some significant changes. First and foremost, the funds for the operation of the pools, including overtime, has been shifted to the public property, as it is their staff that maintains the pools. Secondly, we have adjusted for increased labor and cost of goods and services due to inflation. Finally, I have requested an additional maintenance man for the park side of the department. This addition not only will enable us to better achieve our mission statement, but is a proactive move to capture the volumes of institutional knowledge that we may lose should we have any retirements within the department. Again, I appreciate your allowing time for me to thank my staff. I hope you look favorably upon this FY24 budget request for the Park Department, and I will now do my best to answer any of your questions.
Thank you. Councilor Mendez.
Hello.
Hello.
You have the enterprise account for the golf course, but then on this budget, we also see expenses going for the golf course. So what does that enterprise account pays for? And why is this money coming out of this account?
So the way I understand the enterprise funding working within the department is that the golf course doesn't generate enough revenue to not only cover its costs, but the cost of the Parks Department as a whole. So for the maintenance of all the parks within the city. So there is some supplemental burden on the general fund to help establish an operating budget.
I can follow on from that. If you look in your book on page 330, it outlines the funding process for parks and recreation. And so this year so far, just for instance, we've taken in just over $1.5 million in the enterprise fund. With June still left, that exceeds our annual projection by 17%. So we're at 117% of projected revenue already this year. But Tim is correct that the funding of recreation typically in a municipality is a general fund operation. And so the enterprise that you see here is the operation on page 330 and then the line item budget in the pages that follow. So the enterprise funds most of the operation, all certainly of the golf operation. But there's a general fund subsidy because it's an appropriate expense for the rest of the recreational activities in the city and a common expense for that. And the golf revenue itself doesn't cover all of those activities. Nor does it, frankly, in any municipality that has a municipal golf course. And so funding recreation with general funds is the norm in municipal government in Massachusetts.
Okay. What would be the other contract services? Because I know the councilors, they like to ask about the consultants, but every time when the line item says other, it doesn't.
So the other contract services is for the contract that we have for the corporation that runs the pro shop at the golf course. That contract is based on utilization of the golf course. So from $0 to, I want to say $900,000, there's a certain percentage of greens, fees, carts, and permits that the corporation gets. From $900,000 to this year it got up to $1.1 million. There's an additional percentage. And then for anything over $1.1 million in terms of yearly golf season revenue, then that percentage goes up again. So that number is based on essentially what we did last year at the golf course, which we are about mirroring this year. So far, I think I did a tally today, and I think we're about $7,000 ahead this year of where we were last year. So we're mirroring that very closely, but that is for the operation of the pro shop for the golf course.
As to telephone, Yesterday, we saw under IT, it was like about $70,000 for a telephone, and I just assumed it was like every department head was just going to be paid through the IT department. But then I also see that you have a $10,000 for a telephone in your department.
So part of that is to help pay for the city cell phones. Part of it is for the GPS on trucks. But a good majority of that goes to providing Wi-Fi services at the clubhouse. The reason that isn't provided through IT is that it's the contract with the operator of the lunchroom says that the city will provide cable, phone, and internet. So we don't want the outside contractor on the city's servers. So we provide Wi-Fi in the clubhouse and in the lunchroom so that she can process, the operator of the lunchroom can process credit card payments. Not only that, but it provides a service to the golfers to be able to have Wi-Fi there.
What do the golf workers, what is their assignment and jobs over the winter time when the golf course is closed?
So we do stay very active during the winter time. That's when we'll do all of our tree work. So if we have trees that we know are nuisance trees affecting agronomics on the golf course, we deal with it then. We basically take apart all of our equipment, clean it, put it back together, service all the golf carts, repair any cart path damage that's been done throughout the course of the year. Towards the beginning of the winter is when we will deep tying greens, top dress greens. So even in the winter, we're still very active. They do a lot of work in the clubhouse as well.
What is the season, like when do you open? Because this winter was very mild, so you figured you could be open for
It was.
month. Yeah.
So temperature-wise, you're right, it was very mild, but towards the end of that winter, it got pretty wet. So the golf course was very wet, and when you do damage to turf, especially shearing roots early in the year, the old saying is, when you shear roots in May, you have dead turf in July. So in order to provide consistent, good conditions throughout the course of the year, this year we opened April 1st, and of course it rained. And when we close, we kind of play that by ear. Generally, Mother Nature will close us down. So it's generally somewhere middle of December, towards the end of December.
I'm not sure if you talked about it, but did you talk about the production this year for the golf course, what we're expecting to bring in?
So last golf season, we did $1.6 million. This year, we are approximately on that same pace. So I would, if I had to project, I would say, knock on wood, $1.65 million.
Also, regarding the pool, you said that the pool expenses is not going to be shown on your budget. It's going to be
correct
at a different place in the budget. But the question is that we're only going to have one pool, and then you mentioned that you were looking into backups, other places where the kids would be able to go. Would that be creating any more additional expenses, and where would that be?
So what we're looking to do is we're going to operate the Manning pool free of charge at least 3 days a week because the Cosgrove pool was offered as a pool free of charge. So we'll be operating the Manning pool at least 3 days a week free of charge.
But then you said you were probably going to be looking over at the YMCA and other places that had
So we're still kind of working on that, working with the Y on that. I know they are providing additional swim lessons this year, which is one of the things that they have committed to.
DW Fields Park, regarding to police presence, is there any way that you could probably work an increase in police presence at the park?
The chief and I work relatively closely on that. As you know, the police currently now close the gates for us every night, so we know that there's at least a sweep through there. And I would say there's a sweep through the park at least 2 or 3 times during the course of the day as well.
I've got so much to say about that, but I'm all set, thank you.
All set, Counselor?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Lally.
Thank you, Madam President. There was a hesitation. I didn't know.
Not really.
Right. Commissioner, how you doing?
Fine, thank you.
Just wanted to stress, to you and to the CFO, how happy I am to hear that there is going to be an additional person in the budget. This is something that myself and Councilor D'Agostino, back when he was on the school committee, tried pushing for and working for. So it is good to see that that's, coming. How do you anticipate any, hiring difficulty? I know that, some departments we see come back next year and they still have the vacant funded position.
I don't. As a full-time position, I don't see that it's going to be very difficult to fill. I know that we've struggled to fill some of our temp seasonal positions. Again, that's a minimum wage job. They can be difficult. We've filled, at one point we had 2 at the golf course, and one young man lasted about a week and a half, and that was it. He had it. So filling those temp seasonals can be a little bit more of a challenge, but if the council so chooses to keep that in the budget, we'll know on Thursday night, and I would work to get that posted as soon as possible.
Oh, perfect. No, I know the initial discussion was actually for 2 personnel with the school department contributing on the second. So, I'm very much looking forward to this and to allowing the department to cover more ground. And hopefully if this, to-be hired person turns out well, we can revisit the initially discussed second person as well. Just sort of a future thing to this conversation about the pool. Once the Cosgrove pool is done, it's been mentioned, briefly, just as sort of a theoretical, but I know that Councilor Azak and I have talked about it before. I think we would, really like to see some discussion, some exploration toward, the resurrection of the Montello pool. Because there used to be a pool up in Montello, and that area is a little further away from both pools that we have. So, increasing that coverage, I think, would be beneficial, but that's much more of a future conversation. But I figured I'd start bringing it up in budgets now, just to get get it on people's radar. But I do appreciate it, Mr. Commissioner. Thank you, Madam President.
Welcome. Councilor D'Agostino.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So, yeah, as Councilor Lally alluded to or said, I'm also glad to see we're adding this position 3 years in the making. And it's not the 2 that we started with, but it's certainly progress in the right direction. So glad to see that. Hopefully it will be there when the budget is completed, because it is much needed. 2 items I wanted to just ask you about quickly. There is a bit of a jump in separation costs. Are you anticipating some retirements or?
Well, as I mentioned in my opening, Mr. Muniz has been with the city for 55 years. So that's always a distinct possibility. And we have at least one other employee that has contemplated retirement. So yes, we need to cover those costs should they happen, sir.
Okay, all right. That takes care of that. And then, this may seem like a silly thing to ask about, but I'm just curious. Under chemicals, prior year, FY 22, 10. Last year, we gave you 10, you're looking for 15. Is there a reason that you're anticipating that increase? Is just cost of stuff going up, or is there more property you're going to be, more work you're doing?
Well, it's a little bit of both, to be honest with you, sir, but even at that, at the value of that line item, that's about a month's worth of spraying at the golf course.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
The price of most of the fungicides and the pesticides and the fertilizer that we use has jumped somewhere between 30 and 40% in the past 2 years. The cost of seed is up about almost 60%. We were pretty conservative in our estimates here because we do have some flexibility with the DW Field Trust because the golf course is in the park. So we didn't want to burden the general fund too much. But yes, to let you know, that's we will run through that line item very quickly.
Just to be clear, when you say it's a month's worth, the difference from year to year or the entire 15 only pays for a month's worth?
So our pre-buy for the season, which will get us generally from opening until July 1st, is about $33,000.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, that settles that. Thank you very much for everything you and your staff do and for being here this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Councilor Texera.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. On your purchasing service, you said we're still going to have one pool open, right?
Yes, sir.
So on FY 2023, on your budget proposal, it was $75,000 that you asked for the maintenance for the pool. On FY 2024, your proposed budget, zero. Why is that?
So those are the funds that are going to be shifted to the Public Property Department. So those funds have already been shifted towards the Public Property Department. So when Mr. Plouffe comes before you tomorrow night, I believe, he'll address the fact that those funds have gone from my budget to his. His staff maintains the pools, so the overtime line item has also gone over to his budget.
Okay, and okay, that's that. With the pool operating, same thing. We're still going to have one pool.
Correct.
But you're going to shift the.
Correct. So the operations will maintain, the current level of services in terms of that one pool that we have open. But simply the bills will be paid by public property, and then I will still be overseeing much of the operations.
Okay. We got another question with the overtime. So I see that you've done 15% from FY 2023 to FY 2024.
Is that for pool overtime, sir?
No, overall, on the overtime.
So our overtime proposed budget is $250,000, where I think with the additional employee, some additional overtime is required.
But last year, you asked for 288.
Last year.
Yeah, I can answer that, Counselor. So the request last year was for 288, but that included pool overtime, which is not being requested this year. And so that too, those expenses, you'll see when you visit with Jim Plouffe tomorrow night, all of those expenses have been transferred to the Public Property Department. And this is part of a strategy that I've discussed with you before. Although the Recreation Department oversees the pools, the maintenance has typically been performed by public property personnel. So we're trying to represent those costs where they actually occur.
Still on overtime, why it's so high that we paying? You asking for $250,000 extra yearly, actually this year for overtime?
So the request last year, our total expended was $288,000. That, if you take away the pool overtime, the requested pool overtime, you're down to that about 250 number that is represented for the proposed budget.
When you say pool overtime, so the employees,
So, correct, so building department employees were doing the maintenance at the pool, which means that they were there prior to their shift starting, after their normal shift had ended, and then both Saturdays and Sundays while the pool was in operation, both pools. Correct.
just a question, and on the 288 for your proposal last year, FY 2023, how much did you use on that overtime? Did you use that 288, or there's anything left?
So the pool overtime has, as of earlier this week, is down to 40%. And my overall overtime, if you'll just give me a moment, is
I got that for you, Tim, if you want it.
is at 88.1%. So we've utilized 88%. So, you know, obviously the golf course, when it's open, we have staff in Saturdays and Sundays, which obviously are overtime. We try and, with the limited staff that we have, it does require parks guys to come in on Saturdays as well to help catch up on some maintenance. So yes, we're at 88% of our budget line item for this current fiscal year.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Welcome. Councilor Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, Mr. Carpenter.
Evening.
Just to add my support to the additional personnel, you know, it's been a long time needed. Can you explain the need for that personnel? I believe over the last 5 years, you've taken on a lot of additional responsibilities. Could you just tell us about those?
So I joined the city, it'll be 12 years here in August. In that time, we have taken over the maintenance and responsibilities for Snow Park, Finnegan Park, White Ave, City Hall Plaza, putting Mulberry Street Playground back online, the Charles Tattaglia Park, and the Manning Pool. So that's 8 different properties without an increase in staff. And as I mentioned in my opening, you know, one of the critical things is that when you have an employee in the department for the extended period of time that we've had Mr. Muniz, his institutional knowledge is incredible. I mean, he built half of these parks, for crying out loud. So should he choose to retire, it is critical that some of that knowledge get passed down to the next employees who will be making their way up. So yes, we have taken on several more properties since I've been here with the city. And again, you know, I think institutional knowledge is incredible, and it's important to get it passed down.
Yeah, and I agree with that. So you spoke about the Cosgrove pool. Have we finalized the plan on Cosgrove?
So we have finalized, and we're hoping that by the end of, I think, bids will be available the end of this month, and we're hoping to have bids back by the middle of next.
I know, you know, since this hasn't been awarded yet to any contractor, it'd be difficult to talk about specific timeframes, but generally, what would you see the timeframe of completion for the Cosgrove pool?
Our goal is going to be able to have it open for next summer. That's the goal. You know, a lot of the outdoor work obviously can't take place during the winter, but a lot of the indoor work, i.e. the bathhouse work, really can continue during the winter months.
That'd be great if it could come online for next year. Lastly, I know I spoke to some of your crew earlier this morning who were over at Downey baseball field getting ready for a tournament that's going to be a regional tournament that they've been awarded. And I just want to compliment you and your staff on your work on Downey baseball field. I believe it's the best in the city, and because of the efforts of your staff, the Downey's now being awarded regional tournaments, and we're proud of them that they're going to be able to participate in these tournaments. And so, I wanted to thank you and your staff for your efforts there.
Thank you, Councilor.
That's all.
Thank you. Councilor Farwell.
Good evening. Just a couple of quick questions. Obviously, during the warm weather, probably from May through September or October, there is heavy use of parks and playgrounds on the weekends. That's when I get the most calls that either there's a parking problem for the police or refuse pickup. Is there any thought to hiring the new maintenance man for parks on a Wednesday through Saturday, strike that, on a Tuesday through Saturday, or Wednesday through Sunday basis? That would reduce some of the overtime costs, and I would think it would address that heavier use of our real estate, if you will, when frankly I think most of your staff works a Monday through Friday shift, unless I'm mistaken. So could you expand on that a little bit, and would you think it would be helpful to have someone work on what might be an odd week?
I think it's an interesting idea, and to be honest with you, Councilor, I hadn't necessarily thought of it. I think my initial reaction is yes. My only concern is I wouldn't want to have an employee by him or herself. That would be my concern. So it would require maybe another employee, or to be able to shift one of my current employees to that same schedule, simply for safety reasons.
Well, that was kind of a segue to the next thing that I was going to mention, and that is I'd almost rather see $53,268, which is the projected salary for the new maintenance man in the parks. I'd rather see that taken away from overtime and give you the extra body, because clearly some of your people, they're due vacations, and they may want to take vacations during June, July, and August, so that would diminish the available staff you have. So listen, it's up to the mayor to run the city, but I think it's worthy of a conversation that we don't necessarily hire people for certain positions Monday through Friday, when in fact I think the demand for their talent and services may be on the weekend days.
It is definitely something to consider, Councilor. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Councilor Azak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Commissioner.
Good evening.
Just a couple of questions. I did not get a chance to ask the mayor the other night, but I know he's allocating some funds, for ARPA funds for parks, and are you involved in that at all? You are? Okay.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to put in a public request, because we've been trying to get some funding for Brockton Blazers Softball League over at they play behind the
Raymond School.
And I know I asked our state delegation, I've even asked Senator Brady, but they weren't able to get us any funding. I mean, they're looking just for about $10,000 to help with the fencing. I mean, the young ladies are working hard, the coaches are really working hard with them, and we've been promising them, and I think they've just been getting the runaround, because I know that area is also maintained by the schools. Not so much maybe your department kind of collaborate back and forth. So I'm just going to ask you publicly if you can do anything to get them just some funding. We would really appreciate it.
So as you indicated, that area is maintained and permitted by the school department, but I'm definitely willing to work with them to see what we can do.
Because I'll ask the superintendent when he's here tomorrow as well, but I just feel it's just a small amount of money, but this has gone on for way too long. Like, they work hard and they deserve a little bit of a little bit of our monetary support. So if we can do that, that would be great. I also want you just to, I know you updated me, but publicly, I know the last budget hearings last year, we talked about the fencing for Mellon Street to protect the residents from the golf balls. That's actually, if you just want to just update residents in that area.
Absolutely. So the original end date for that contract was actually December. We've had to extend it 4 or 5 times simply because these are 85-foot wooden poles coming down from Canada, and getting them just inside the United States was tricky. Then there was that, they were on Norfolk Southern, there was that train derailment. Long story short, the poles are there. I sent you the video. They started drilling holes today. The crane hopefully will be there tomorrow, which means the poles would be up in theory tomorrow, or at least let's say by the end of the week. Netting should be up that following week, so I'm going to say 2 weeks, give or take, and that project should be complete.
Thank you. I hope the residents on Mellon Street, hopefully that'll protect them from the golf balls. And lastly, just, you spoke about Cosgrove Pool, that you're opening the Manning Pool if you, making it complimentary to not charging the kids. But have we thought about how we're going to get the kids from the east side, southeast, over to the west side?
So the mayor and I are actually working through a couple different avenues to try and get that taken care of. There is a current bat route that runs relatively close, but we're going to try and see if we can negotiate it so that it's a little bit closer, maybe right from pool to pool. A couple of concerns, to be honest with you. If you only ran one shuttle there and one shuttle back, then you're stuck there should there be a thunderstorm or whatnot. So there's some details that we got to really mesh out just to make sure that it's seamless and safe for everybody involved.
Okay. I just want to make sure, we're doing all this to be able to accommodate the, east side, northeast or south, make sure that the kids are able to get there. So I think that that would be great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Councilor Minicello.
Good evening, how are you?
Good evening, fine, thank you.
So with regard to that issue that Councilor Azak just mentioned, do you have money budgeted for that, or is that something you're working with the mayor to find monies to?
So if we're working with BAT, I think they're going to be able to provide that service free of charge. I did have brief conversations with the Boys and Girls Club, and that wouldn't be free of charge. So there isn't currently money in the budget for that. So I think the BAT route is probably the more fiscally, financially, and more responsible route.
Now, Mr. CFO, can any of the mayor's youth advisory money, if that's not all taken for utilized, for that type of an endeavor, if need be?
The simple answer, Councilor, is yes, and because these costs are being incurred related to the construction of the new pool, I'll check into it, but it's also possible that that project would be able to absorb those costs depending on what they are. So that's something we'll look into.
Just to let you know, Mr. CFO, so far in terms of a tally, in terms of electric bills, we're up to almost $400,000. So if we can get some of those lower programs, we could find a couple of extra dollars for some of these programs, And when the schools come here, it's going to be the big bonanza in terms of how much electricity they use. Well, we'll talk about the schools tomorrow. Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. I appreciate your answer.
Thank you.
All set?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Madam President.
It's my turn. The hardest part of this job is waiting until last. And so I wanted to mention, I think what you're doing at the golf course in these years that you've been with us is very laudable, and you must be very proud at how you have transformed the golf course over these years. And I'm not a golfer, but it looks awfully nice when I drive by or go to the park to walk.
I'll be honest with you, I don't do the actual work. I was just the guy that hired the right guy.
Right, that's right, and followed up. I'm concerned about you, and you know this is no surprise. I'm concerned about the parks and the playgrounds and the things for the rest, and the places for the rest of us and our quality of life. Today, I visited the old Gilmore Playground on Grove Street. We're working on playground equipment there. We're going to find a way to get that playground equipment. But the grass in places was this tall. And so I wanted to mention that gently but firmly. Later this week, I'm meeting with the baseball league that is playing in the Gilmore School field. They want to show me some field conditions and conditions in the area, and we'll be talking afterwards, I'm sure. But again, these are important things for the children who don't play golf and perhaps don't swim. And so it's my purpose simply to say, we've got to give these things attention.
I understand, Counselor, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. There was a situation a couple of weeks ago where I was down to actually 2 employees at the Parkside. So, getting an additional employee, hopefully, please, would be a huge, huge benefit.
Anything that we can do to help you, because the whole city benefits from it in a much more substantial way than the golf course. Many more people use these things. I wanted to ask you about fires in the parks and sale of food, which has been a problem the last couple of years. Is that still happening, and how are we addressing it?
So the Park Commission has established a rule that there are no charcoal grills allowed in any city park. Clearly, that is to try and mitigate anyone from pouring out hot coals onto dry grass. They have also established within the last 4 to 5 years a rule in directly addressing or trying to address in an attempt to address the illegal cooking and selling of food at certain parks, so that there are no grills at all allowed at James Edgar Playground or at Bent Playground. Those were the 2 that we were having the largest issue with the illegal selling of food. Now, recently, through some collaborative work with the Board of Health, they have made several visits to both those parks in the past several weeks, actually issuing cease and desist orders. The proof will be in the pudding. We'll continue to follow up on the weekends to see whether that's actually happening or not.
Well, that was my next question. How are you accomplishing this on the weekends?
It is through the hard work of Jim Doucette at the Board of Health and myself driving through parks on the weekends. That's how we're doing it.
To observe this activity? Okay. You mentioned that some areas are maintained by public property, the pools are?
So the operation of the pumps, the adding of chemicals, the physical, the grass my guys still mow, but the actual physical checking of the water quality, all of that is public property employees.
And you mentioned that it's difficult to find seasonal employees. Do you still try?
Absolutely. Absolutely do. The posting is actually, I believe, is back up. It's part of the Summer's Jobs program, so apply, please apply.
I'm sorry, I have this knee problem. I can't push a lawnmower.
Wasn't specific, but okay.
Could you get her a rider?
You've got an
There we
answer
go.
for everything. Also, I wanted to mention to you that the Parks Commission meeting minutes are only through March of '23, so you're missing a number. I checked this morning.
Okay, I will follow up on that, but we're usually pretty good about getting them posted.
I guess it's possible you've prepared them and approved them, but not posted them.
Okay.
I appreciate your work. I appreciate working with you. I'm hopeful that these parks will get, and these fields will get more attention.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you very much. We'll shift gears now.
Cemetery, invited Tim Carpenter, Superintendent of Cemeteries.
Good evening, councilors. Thank you for allowing me just
Good evening, Mr. Carpenter.
Just a few brief moments before I address any questions. I'd like to thank the staff of the Cemetery Department for their continued efforts to make the City of Brockton cemeteries organized, maintained, and in good order. From Ms. Nicole Fisk in in the office, to Mr. Duquette and the other members of the cemetery staff. They continue to provide professional, compassionate burials and foster beneficial working relationships with the funeral homes here in the city and those outside the city. Their commitment resulted in another very successful presentation of the grounds on Memorial Day, and it's consistent throughout the year. The current fiscal year, we have performed 291 total burials, with 284 at the Melrose, 4 at Cohasset, and 3 at the Union Cemetery. Again, that's 284 burials and approximately 297 working days, and that includes Saturdays. These numbers speak to the dedication of the staff. Our perpetual care accounts for the Melrose, Cohasset, and Union cemeteries are in solid shape, and the sale of lots and graves account is as well. The buildup of the funds in the sale of lots and graves account should provide the department with the necessary resources to complete the expansion project currently in development. Again, councilors, I thank you for this forum to publicly thank my staff. I hope you will look forward favorably on the FY24 budget request of the cemetery department. And with that, I will do my best to answer any questions you might have.
Councilors? Any questions? Okay, thank you. I have one. Under purchase of services on page 171, the real estate charges are zeroed out. Last year they were 300. Why is that?
So, oddly enough, the water bills essentially were being paid out of real estate tax charges. We don't get charged real estate tax.
I wouldn't think so.
So we have moved that money from real estate tax into the water and sewer charge, which you will see the previous fiscal year was zeroed. That's where those funds have gone.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have. Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
Thank you.
Weights and Measures, invited Kevin Croker, sealer of Weights and Measures.
What's a consultant for cemetery?
Good evening, Mr. Carpenter.
Good evening. How are you?
Good to see you.
I'm here. Thank you. So we're proposing a level-funded budget for the 24. Two-man department. I think we do a lot for 2 men. We cover over 1,000 business in the city. Bringing $110,000, which isn't a lot, but it covers the salary at least. And it's a mandatory. It's the law. And I'll take any questions anyone has.
Councilors, any questions? Thank you.
Have a great night.
Good to see you.
Fine job, Kevin. You were fantastic.
DPW Commissioner, invited Patrick Hill, DPW Commissioner.
I hope all my budgets go that smoothly. Good evening, councilors.
Good evening.
So I'm here this evening tonight to discuss the Department of Public Works Commissioner's Office. Commissioner's Office overarching goal is to administer and oversee the personnel and daily operations of all the DPW divisions, guaranteeing the safe, prompt, professional, and courteous completion of all city services. As a commissioner, I set procedures and policies that drive the efficient operation of the division. Some of the essential services provided by my office are contract management, utilities division management, response and operations to all emergencies, collaboration with the engineering division, work with the Brockton Emergency Management Agency for emergency preparedness, managing the waste and management and recycling, all infrastructure management, the street maintenance program, and the streetlight management division. In fiscal year 2023, the DPW had several notable accomplishments, including our spring paving, which went off very well, and RFP that went out for the two-way traffic for Warren Ave. Furthermore, the DPW is working with the Law Department to develop an RFP for the city's future biosolids management project at the wastewater treatment plant, emphasizing a commitment to the sustainable practices and responsible waste management. As you can see in this budget, there are no significant increases in items from the prior year. In conclusion, the Commissioner's Office is here to ensure our community thrives and our services remain top-notch and our infrastructure continues to support our growth and progress. By overseeing crucial operations and maintaining vital infrastructure, the DPW plays an instrumental role in enhancing the quality of life of all the residents. And with that, I will take any questions.
Councilors, questions for the Commissioner's budget specifically? No? No questions for your budget, Commissioner.
DPW Engineering invited Patrick Hill, DPW Commissioner.
Good evening, Commissioner.
Good evening, councilors. So I sit here before you this evening to discuss the mission of the Engineering Division and the remarkable work it undertakes to maintain the property plans, records, and to ensure smooth functioning of our city's infrastructure. The Engineering Division plays a vital role in supporting various departments and agencies within our city and its dedication to instrumental in ensuring the accuracy, compliance, and efficiency of our operations. Part of the role of the Engineering Division is to do deed entitled confirmation. They serve as the record maintenance and liaison, reviewing comprehensive plans and changing all updates to the Assessors plan to ensure accuracy and relevance. We supply resident engineer services to all of our road construction that is completed by the Department of Public Works. We do stormwater management as a new role in this budget as well. Some of the accomplishments this year in 2023 exemplify their unwavering commitment to serve the community. Through their diligent efforts, they have made significant progress in enhancing our infrastructure, improving compliance with regulations, and promoting sustainable practices. Their tireless dedication and expertise ensure that our city's records are accurate, our infrastructure is well maintained, and our community thrives. And with that, I will take questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. This time you're in luck. Councilor Farwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, I'm not going to get into a great level of detail this evening, but I do want to talk about engineering because you have, we as a city, are charging back a significant amount of the salaries within engineering to stormwater. And you and I have had many conversations about stormwater. As far as I'm concerned, it's the new S word in my vocabulary, and I will get into great detail on Thursday evening. But and you've got some exceptional people up there. I mean, Mr. Newton's been there for
63 years.
53 years, since 1959. Mr. Kelleher, I hear nothing but good things about him. Mr. Youns, you have a vacant position. But Mr. Newton, you have 25% of his salary coming out of stormwater. Mr. Kelleher, you have 25% of his salary coming out of stormwater. Mr. Youns, 25%. The city engineer, 50%. And the assistant city engineer position that's being suggested would be stormwater 50% and 50%, I assume, from the general fund. You also know, because we're working on that technical committee on the ordinance I filed to repeal stormwater and replace it with what I hope will be a common sense approach. What do we actually need to do for stormwater management? What will it reasonably cost? Because the taxpayers pay real estate taxes to support city government. And before stormwater came along and someone had these grandiose plans for fees and collecting more revenue from the residents, we paid for these positions out of the general fund. Now what we've done is we've maintained the real estate property and other taxes that people pay, and now we've dumped on their backs the stormwater fees. And I'm going to defer to my colleague, Councilor Rodriguez, but I understand I think it's the Calvary Cemetery has been billed $16,000 for stormwater maintenance. And I got to tell you, I'm just fed up to here with stormwater matters. So I would caution you, and I would ask you, and I hope the mayor will support this, I would not fill that city engineer's position as yet. I am hoping the council will repeal the current stormwater ordinance and replace it with something sensible. And then I think obviously you should be given some appropriation to continue engineering where you've back-charged some of it to stormwater. But I would not, at least this counselor is not of a mind to give you the full amount that's been requested. I think we need to see where that new ordinance is going, find out the revenues that may or may not come in, and then go from there. So I just wanted to give you a heads up. I appreciate the fact that you're always accessible if I need to call you. I appreciate the updates, especially when we have other issues going on in DPW, whether it's a loss of water. But I really do want to work with you and Mr. Clarkson and the council to wrap our arms around this stormwater beast that I think has been thrust upon this city and unfairly so. And I don't expect a response tonight because it's too complex an issue. I mean, you and I couldn't possibly do it in one evening. So,
Agreed.
But I wanted, up front, publicly, I wanted you to know where I was coming from, that's all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other counselors for engineering?
All right, next, DPW Highway, invited Patrick Hill, DPW Commissioner.
Good evening, Mr. Commissioner.
Good evening, councilors. So the Highway Division is responsible for a wide range of services that directly impact our daily lives. One of the most crucial responsibilities is coordinating snow and ice removal operations. During harsh winters, the Highway Division works tirelessly to ensure public access to the city main and side roads, employing both city vehicles and private contractors. Their prompt response and efficient snow removal efforts play a significant role in keeping the city residents safe during challenging weather conditions. They also play a direct role in responding to emergency incidents related to wind and rain. Their collaborations with the entire operations division allow for swift response and resolution during such events. By working together, they ensure the community remains safe and resilient in the face of unexpected weather changes. They also serve as the city's forestry department. The city's purchase of new equipment in the past years has allowed us to accommodate more extensive tree removal requests. We also frequently collaborate with private utility companies on special projects, ensuring the removal of safe and damaged trees. The Highway Division takes all their responsibility in maintaining our streetlights and ensuring the roads are well lit and safe for pedestrians and drivers as well. In fiscal year 2023, the Highway Department achieved many significant accomplishments. They established a much more self-sufficient sweeping program by purchasing a new sweeper. We sweep all of the city streets in-house twice a year now. We've also done multiple river cleanings, removing debris and trash from all the city's waterways. This year's budget is basically level funded with no significant increases.
Thank you, Commissioner. Councillor Farwell, followed by Thompson.
Okay, I'll be brief on this one. Commissioner, you and I, first of all, the Highway Division, along with Water and Sewer, you've got some great people there. And you and I have actually talked about the fact that I think for what we require of them, I don't think their salaries are competitive with the private sector. Councilors, of all of the departments in the city, this is the one where we should have an outside independent study done of all of the different components of DPW. What is the DPW current organizational structure? What should that structure look like if we expect the commissioner and the various tentacles within DPW to be successful? It just cries out for, let's take a look at if we're allocating resources where they need to be. And I'm talking about not just equipment, but people. Are we allocating sufficient resources to each of these different divisions? Perhaps we're over-allocating. But I am going to propose at some point, and I've talked to the Commissioner and Mr. Clarkson about it, I am going to propose a resolve to talk about having that independent audit done because we demand a lot of the commissioner. I mean, he really has a lot of different, his span of control is large, and his responsibilities are very large, and I'm not convinced we're where we should be. And the other thing is, where do we want DPW to be in the next 5 years? So for highway, which we're talking about now, and the others, I just wanted to float that out to all of you. And lastly, I would say I wouldn't use the Collins Institute on this one, because a great many people who are there come from municipal or state government. They might be accustomed to bloat and some degree of inefficiency, and I don't want that. I want to get the bloat out of it. I want to get the efficiency levels up, and I want to make sure we set the commissioner up to be as successful as we can. And I would just, if the commissioner or Mr. Claxon want to comment, because they're aware of my thoughts, I would welcome that.
The counselor and I have discussed this, and from my perspective, any organizational review for a department that has existed for so long is always a good idea. And I believe, and that's why I was just mentioning to Pat, given some of the purchase of service dollars in the budget, something like that could likely be funded from within the budget, if not certainly from human resources or from my department. But it's always good for us to take an organizational look at how things are structured, because technology and demands on the department change over time. And so it's always, I think, helpful for us as leadership to have an outside voice suggest to us how we might change with those times.
And then finally, there may be examples in other communities that we could adopt as presented to us or as modified to make us as efficient, as effective as possible. So I thank both of you, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Thompson, followed by Councilor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, Commissioner Hill. So just quickly, I saw that you're not requesting any additional personnel this year. Overall, you seem to have a pretty level-funded budget. It looks like it's actually been reduced a little bit, but I think that's because of some of the issues of rearranging monies into other departments. So you mentioned the street sweepers, and so I'm just interested in the equipment that was purchased over the last fiscal year. Can you talk about some of the equipment that the highway department has purchased this year?
So last year, the only purchase that we made was the street sweeper. We used some remaining snow money to make that purchase. I mean, in the near future, there is a lot of equipment that I would like to have just for safety purposes. You know, to the extent that we continue on this path of removing trees, the dead trees, as much as we do, I would like to have, you know, a boom truck. There is equipment that I would like to look into to cleaning the rivers in a safer manner. Every time I seem to put somebody in a river, they seem to get hurt. Their legs get stuck in the mud. I had a couple of injuries this year that had a long-lasting effect on the department this spring. So I'm always looking to purchase stuff for safety purposes for the guys. But all in all, my fleet's in pretty good shape at the highway department.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. You spoke a little bit about what you were planning to purchase. That was going to be my next question, and the fact that you speak about tree removals out of the rivers. You know, any equipment that can help with that. I've walked a lot of our rivers. I see that trees are damming up a good portion of our rivers, causing trash buildup, and you know, just when I look at it, you know, some environmental degradation in our rivers and our waterways. And so anything we can do as a city to clear out some of that debris and trees that have fallen through our brooks and rivers, you know, would really help the environment and the, you know, the natural beauty of these brooks and rivers. So I do appreciate that.
Counselor, if I could just answer the question on equipment before we go on to the next item. As I've mentioned before, we held back over $3 million in free cash in this year's budget, specifically to address some of the city's capital needs. So shortly after we go through this budget process, we anticipate coming to you with a pretty robust capital plan to be able to address some of those capital needs using cash to both save on interest costs and be able to take advantage of the amount of free cash that we developed. And I should say, when Pat was talking about putting people in a river, he didn't mean permanently.
Well, I appreciate those comments, Mr. CFO, and I look forward to that capital plan. I'd like to see what we're looking to purchase. So, looking at it, I see our paving, our paving budget has pretty much remained the same. I know, paving of streets is one of the highest priorities of our city, and I know, Mr. Clarkson, we briefly talked during the debt obligation conversation about a potential $10 million bond to address our paving needs, which is, I think, greatly needed. But in the here and now, looking at our current proposed paving budget, when can we expect the next round of pavings for our streets?
Right now, it looks like paving will probably commence in the end of August, beginning of September. This year's initial paving season that happened here in the spring was actually last year's paving season. We had a contractual issue getting the contract signed and getting it around and then getting on a schedule, so we had to wait until the spring of this year for last fall's paving. So this year we'll do 2 rounds of paving. We also have a little bit of extra money from the Winter Recovery Assistance Program that was given us to us by the state. So I suspect at the end of August we'll probably get into another whole round of paving.
Great. And earlier this year we did, about 15 streets? Would we be looking at roughly the same come this new season?
We did 11 streets. 11 streets this year. I suspect we'll do a few more in the spring. I mean, in the fall. I apologize.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, and I know our residents are glad to hear that as well. Just lastly, looking through the budget, I see $75,000 for holiday decorations. I know you had a similar budget last year. Could you talk about the holiday decorations? What exactly are those? And over the last 2 years, are we planning on spending $150,000 on holiday decorations? From fiscal 23, 25.
You threw me off with $150,000.
Yeah. I'm just saying combined.
I've only spent $17,000 out of that line item this year, just to replace lights and things on the ornamental lights downtown, so and for installation. So at the end of the day, we're looking to replace all the holiday decorations that are downtown. They're worn out. They're 6 or 7 years old. Last year, that was the plan. I got caught up in a few other things, and by the time I was able to sit down, figure out a way to procure those holiday decorations, it was too late to order them. So they wouldn't have been here until January, February of this year. I kind of got lost in a couple of other things, and I didn't end up ordering them. I do plan on ordering them in July or August of this year. So
that's great. I know, speaking with Mary Waldron and the DBA and the preparations for this year's holiday parade, maybe I'll send out an invite for you to participate. Maybe the DBA and all of the people preparing for the holiday parade can talk about decorations and maybe what they're looking to get for holiday decorations, and I think might be helpful if you were involved in that conversation. So I'll make sure you're invited to the first meeting. Not like you have much else to do. So
happy to attend.
Great. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Commissioner, quick question for you. Who is the Deputy Commissioner of DPW in Brockton?
There is
when you're not here. Who is the...
So the Director of Operations fills that role. When I'm not here, that's Mark Peterson.
So he's basically your second?
That's correct.
Okay. I know we've been lucky in the last couple of years and so with snow removal. How many pieces of equipment do we now own as a city to remove, mild snow and doing some road treatments?
We have approximately 25 municipal plows and 14 sidewalk plows. That's it. Last year, we had 90 pieces of contracted equipment that we didn't end up using. That number is pretty low historically. For some reason, the contractors are not participating in snow operations anymore. I don't know if it's wear and tear on their equipment, but we've had a real struggle getting people to sign up for those.
Have you looked into perhaps doing what the school department did in terms of purchasing the buses so we can get away from renting buses? Have you looked into perhaps augmenting your snow removal capabilities and road treatment so that way you can kind of decrease the demands that the outside contract actually brings in? Because the way I see it is if you have additional personnel, that you can cross-pollinate those individuals to be able to do other things within DPW, and then use them in the winter for winter work.
So a lot of that equipment, Counselor, and I'll just be upfront with you, is very, very expensive. It would sit for most of the year other than snow operations. I'll give you an example. Regular size backhoe cost about $150,000. I don't even have the staff if I were to purchase 10 more pieces of equipment to operate that because most of my guys don't have hoisting licenses.
No, but I'm saying to augment your staff with some of the funding so that you have more personnel in the department to be able to do some of that work.
I'm happy to pick away at it a little by little every year. I think it's a great idea.
I'm not saying to eliminate the contractors altogether, but I'm saying to kind of bring that number down so it's not affecting you as much when you have a quarter of an inch of snow or something and you need guys to go out and treat the roads that you might not have to use the contractors to do it.
I'm always for more staff, more equipment. We have plenty of work to keep us busy from now to the end of time, to be honest with you. So we do the best we can with what we have, but I would certainly welcome more staff and more equipment.
And when do you foresee that small driveway off of Pleasant Street to be done?
That'll be done in August.
Okay.
The gas company had to go in there, and then we had to let it settle out for 90 days.
At 150 feet, is it how long it is? Okay. Listen, I just want to publicly leave it here that, and I've said this all along, I think the men and women that work in DPW in terms of the water, sewer, the highway, and some of the other services that they provide are probably the backbone of this, of city government, to be honest with you. I mean, when you see those guys in the winter, when it's below zero, digging up those trenches that they're digging up, it's something that I wouldn't want to do. Yet they're out there doing it every day. So I want to just to kind of leave it so that they know that at least this body appreciates the work that they do for us and for the citizens of Brockton. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Well said. Any other councilors for the Highway Department? No? No other councilors. Thank you. Madam Clerk?
DPW Refuge, invited Patrick Hill, DPW Commissioner.
Commissioner, how you doing?
Councilors. So the mission of the Refuse Department is to maintain cleanliness and hygiene within our community. They work closely with various departments, including the Board of Health, the Building Department, the Mayor's Office, to ensure cleanup of vacant lots, remote areas for debris that has been illegally dumped and abandoned. By actively addressing these issues, the Refuse Department play a crucial role in maintaining a clean and attractive environment for our residents. The Refuse Division also serves as a primary point of contact for private citizens regarding refuse collection. They promptly answer calls and investigate complaints related to refuse collection, including instances of illegal dumping. Their diligent efforts help to address and rectify these issues, ensuring the cleanliness of our city. In collaboration with neighborhood cleanup groups, the Refuse Division assists in coordinating efforts to pick up trash and debris. They actively engage with with groups fostering community involvement and collective action to maintain cleanliness in our neighborhoods. One notable event that we do every year is Keeping Brockton Beautiful Day, and after discussions with the mayor, we plan on having another Keeping Brockton Beautiful Day in the fall. You'll notice a significant increase in the waste removal item in this year's budget, which is due to a fee increase that we will be coming to the council for very shortly, probably in July. The enterprise fund has been able to sustain itself without a fee increase for over 20 years. However, due to a recent increase in disposal costs, this is no longer sustainable. I'll be requesting an increase at the beginning of this fiscal year. After working closely with the finance budget, with Troy and the rest of his staff, we think that that request is going to be $30 a quarter. You'll also see a significant increase in department equipment, which is going to be used to purchase equipment to accommodate dumpings that we have been repeatedly seeing throughout the city. In conclusion, I want to recognize and appreciate the remarkable work undertaken by the Refuse Division. It's a hard job. It's a small staff. They do a great job, and that's all I have.
Mr. Clarkson?
If I could just follow on what the commissioner said, just to highlight, you'll see on page 221 is where that significant increase is coming in waste removal. That is because the current contract is ending, but the commissioner is being a bit modest here. I want to give a shout out to the commissioner and give him some real credit. The collection and disposal of solid waste is one of the few items that has a blanket exemption in the Massachusetts procurement laws. Using that exemption, Pat went directly not only to our current providers, but to other providers, and was able to create significant downward pressure on the renewal contract. So although it seems like a huge increase, it is, because pickup costs and disposal costs have increased significantly over the course of this contract. But we have a cost avoidance here in the millions of dollars. And when this discussion first started, those costs were inching toward $10 million a year. And so there was significant work that Pat and his team undertook with the support of my office and the law department to be able to bring that cost down to $8.5 million for next year. So we never want to talk about fee increases, but as we noted, the last time there was a fee increase for refuse in Brockton, George Bush was president. So we try very hard to keep those costs as low as possible. And this is an example of, it appears to be a huge increase, but it's much less than it otherwise would have been due to the efforts of Pat and his team.
Thank you, Mr. CFO. Councillor Thompson, followed by Councillor Mendez, followed by Councillor D'Agostino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, good evening, Mr. Commissioner. I'm glad you are, upfront with, with the need for a fee increase. Looking at the numbers, it didn't seem that the current monies being paid into the account would be enough to support the services that are currently provided. You did make mention of a roundabout number, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that next month. So would there be any anticipated increase in services, or, with this new contract, would we be maintaining the same services we currently have, or could you talk about potentially there would be some increase in services, even potentially decrease in services? I would assume we would still have the one big recycling bucket, one small waste barrel weekly. So maybe you could just talk a little bit about that.
So the service is going to remain exactly the same. The proposal that went back and forth ended up right back where it started. So no trash service will change. In fact, actually, we were able to get an additional service, so everybody in the city will be allowed this fiscal year, to one large item that's not covered on a weekly basis. So any items that's larger than 5 feet, we will have a couple of extra dumpsters at the recycling center so that people can bring those items directly and dump them free of charge. One free item per household.
So it'll be one bulk item for the fiscal year. Just in general with the DPW refuse, as somebody who's been involved in multiple community cleanups and now this year as a member of the beautification committee, the amount of work that your guys do, as you said, with the limited staff is really amazing. We left them with quite a mess over at Snow Park a few weeks ago, and you guys were prompt to clean it up, and that's much appreciated because that's one thing the community can really get involved in is cleaning up their neighborhood or the community or the different waterways we have. And so, people feel good about being able to participate in those projects. And the fact that we're greatly supported by this department, it really goes a long way with, let's call it community development. So we do appreciate that. There was one last. Oh, yes. You spoke briefly about illegal dumping. I mean, that's a huge issue in our city. I think every ward councilor here can state that they've seen a lot of illegal dumping within their wards. Could you talk about what we're doing to try to prevent illegal dumping and maybe even some of the success stories in finding illegal dumpers and holding them to account?
Sure. I mean, illegal dumpings are very hard to track because oftentimes they don't take place in the same areas. When we see them in repeated areas, what we tend to do is install cameras to try to capture people, but that proves to be very difficult because most people dump at night. Cameras cannot see license plates, and we can't track down who these people are. They're 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. So there is instances, one example would be a situation that was occurring down off of Ames Street where the same gentleman probably 15 to 20 times was dumping construction debris in the same spot. We were able to capture him on camera 14 or 15 times. Finally, due to some changes that we made with some different cameras, we were able to get his license plate, and we sent him a $10,000 ticket. So the $10,000 ticket, it's nice to catch somebody, but obviously the goal is for these people not to do these things.
Right.
I mean, and just today we received camera footage from people, so people are starting to turn video footage into us. Today we caught somebody dumping 20 bags of trash out on the street from a social club. We went and had a discussion with those people today. They weren't so accommodating, so we sent them a $2,000 fine today.
It's good. I think we need to, do all we can to, have an anti-dumping campaign, and I know we've talked about this on the beautification committee, and hopefully that will help, will make aware other residents to turn in camera footage or pictures of illegal dumping. We need to hold these people to account. You don't come to Brockton to poop on our city streets, and so we appreciate the efforts of both the Refuse Department, Brockton PD, and anybody else who can help us identify illegal dumpers. So thank you for that, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, you're welcome. Councilor Mendez.
Thank you. As to your budget, the holiday line item, in 2022 you had $0, and then last year you asked for $2,587. Is this to throw away the Christmas trees? Like, what is this line item we do, and how much have we used it so far year to date with this one?
That's a good question, Counselor. I would have to get back to you. I'm assuming this is due to a contractual obligation. Sometimes when holidays fall on certain days of the week and employees have that certain day of the week off, we owe them an extra day's pay. So on a Monday, say if an employee had a Monday off and that was his scheduled day off, he would receive 48 hours of pay in that week. So I believe that's to accommodate that, but I could get back to you.
Do you know how much is being used so far for this year to date on that?
I didn't spend any money out of that this year.
Only because you didn't have it before and then you put it in, just want to make sure that it's being used.
This is contractual, so you're absolutely right. You're right. It's with the money.
Yeah.
I can tell you how much we've spent thus far this year. Just give me a sec. Holiday pay, was that the question, Counselor?
Yes.
I'm showing that we haven't spent any out of that line yet this year.
The next question is regarding communication services. Similar rationale. In 2022, $362. And then last year you asked for $7,500. Now this year you're increasing the amount to $8,000, which I'm assuming you probably used up. But what would you need the communication services would that be for? And how much have you used up so far year to date?
Communication services, Counselor, is used for cell phones and iPad services.
Wouldn't that be under the IT department? I'm very confused because I know IT department has a line item that's supposed to be for all the department heads in the city. But then I see in different departments, they also using it for the same.
So some of the costs are borne by IT, but there are contractual for outside contractors and other costs where those costs are borne. To answer your previous question on department maintenance, there's been $6,457 spent out of that $7,500 so far this year. On the communication services, there's been $3,100 spent so far this year. And we can give you the detail if you'd like on both of those items.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, sorry. Councilor D'Agostino.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Counselor.
Two things on the, well, first, I just want to make sure I'm looking at the right thing. Under waste removal, that is, I believe that's the trash removal contract, correct?
That's correct.
Right, all right. I was wondering, one of the things I've had requests on is, would it be possible to arrange, how you can buy a second recycle bin? Is there a way to be able to set things up so that a family who chose to would have the option to buy a second trash barrel? And one of the issues that ties to that, other than, being able to say, hey, we always have to put a bunch of bags out, why don't I just get an extra barrel and pay the extra fee, which would be neater for the neighborhood and certainly more convenient for the homeowner that chose to do that, is I'm sure we've all driven by and seen that the animals have gotten into the bags overnight. And so I just wonder, because I've gotten a lot of outreach from constituents about, more rodents, and I'm just wondering if how much that plays a role in it, and if we could cut down maybe on some of the rodent issues if that was an option to get another barrel and not have as many bags out there.
Honestly, Council, we see as many barrels chew through as we do bags. The bags tend to do pretty well out in the road. Having a second barrel would require you to have a second fee.
Right.
So, like in a two-family home would pay 2 trash fees. So having a second barrel, in essence, is like having 2 trash fees.
But could
Anybody could do that, yes.
So that is a choice, that is an option.
Absolutely.
Okay, see, I didn't know that was an option. So somebody who says, geez, I'm going through this much and buying the bags, I could just pay a second fee and have a second barrel. They could do that?
Yes.
And how would they arrange that?
They could just call down to the recycling center and we would set up another account for them.
Okay, I did not know you could get an extra barrel. I thought just recycling. So, all right, thank you for the clarification on that. The second thing that there's been an uptick in, you and I've talked about this a little bit, is the issue of mattresses, and we're starting to see those being added to the trash being dumped around the city. When the contract comes up, are we anticipating that there's anything we're going to be able to do on that, or is that part of that new drop-off, the big item drop-off that you were talking about?
So mattress is not necessarily a big item drop-off. It would be a large piece of furniture or something like that. Mattresses go in an entirely separate area in the back of a box truck. We have a box truck at the recycling center to fill if people decide that they wanted to go that, come down and dump them there. But mattresses are expensive. Right now, to dispose a mattress, to pay a company to dispose a mattress, it's $30 minimum. There is a company in Brockton that took over the old FootJoy building that is doing that. Most of the trash collection services in the area have come under contract with them. It's the first disposal site in the area. I think the closest one other than that is in New Bedford. So. It's just a costly kind of pain in the neck thing, but it's the market keeps going up. I can tell you that.
So it's not a lack of an option to get rid of it or a program to get rid of it. The ones that are being illegally dumped are just people that don't feel like paying the fee.
Correct.
We have the option there for them, and they're just not wanting to pay for it.
If they call, it's a $20 fee, and it gets picked up curbside.
Okay. All right. And just for anybody who may have done that, what would be the fine if you were caught dumping like that?
There's no set fee and a fine. Typically, what we would do is, generally speaking, if we catch somebody disposing of stuff, we would charge them for man hours and cost of disposal the first time. If it's somebody repeated or if it's something egregious, we take different steps.
Okay. All right. Yeah, like I said, I wanted to ask about that because obviously since there was that change, there was some kind of a change in the law about that, picking those up, it seems like we're seeing more and more of them dumped in places that they really shouldn't be.
A lot of places don't take them. A lot of surrounding communities don't take them. So that's why you're seeing the big uptick on them. The law did change, I believe, in October.
Right, okay. All right, okay. Yeah. Thank you, that's all I have. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Councillor Lally.
Thank you, Madam President. Aye, Commissioner.
Councillor.
Just had a quick question. Under goods and supplies, department equipment is going from $17,569 to $69,250. There's a bit of an uptick. Figured I'd ask.
Yeah, no, it's a good question and an expected question. So the refuse department, when they're not operating on the normal hours, we do a lot of clean and leans. This year, we're going to be in need of a replacement mower. Just the mower alone is $10,000. A trailer for that mower is another $7,500. I also would like to buy a dump trailer for some of these dumpings. Some of these dumpings that we've been dealing with, whether it be in the park, are in areas that we can't necessarily bring our packer truck. So I would like to get a towable dump trailer so that we can bring our normal-sized trucks, get them in as far as we can, rather than drag equipment through a park or drag equipment through people's lawns. It seems to be a better approach. A dump trailer is anywhere between $13,000 and $15,000. So.
Fair enough. And I know what this is because we've talked about it a lot, and the folks at Refuse have been hugely helpful, with cleans and liens, in my ward when the issues come up. But for the folks at home, could you just sort of outline what the clean and lean is?
So the clean and lean process starts with the Board of Health. The Board of Health, when they get a complaint about somebody's property, will go out and investigate. Typically, they give that person 10 days to remove all the debris that is written through an order. If they're not working with the people after the 10 days, we get a written order from the Board of Health saying that their time has expired, do the removal. My guys will go in sometimes the same day, sometimes within that week, and go in and clean and remove all the stuff that's part of the order. That process, at my level, we charge back for any dumping material, for any equipment use, and for staff costs. Back to the property, it gets leaned to the property.
Perfect. Yeah. So it's not like we're mowing their lawn for free.
Correct.
Which is always good to hear. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Madam President.
You're welcome. Commissioner Hill, good evening. 3 more to go. You're doing well. I just wanted to say generally that we have challenges in Ward 4 with people dumping. East Street, Kame Street, to name a few that have come in front of me recently. And I appreciate your guys' efforts to help us out with that. And also the police get involved as well. You have any thoughts on how do we address this? How do we reduce the incidences of this?
Most of the dumpings tend to happen in areas that are unlit, unpowered, and untraveled. So, or with no residential homes in the area. So East Street's a great example. The approach we've been taking, and it seems to be effective, is to deploy cameras that we can hide, that are battery operated, that take small snapshots and small videos, and they're used through a cellular service. I mean, we've been successful with that. Other than that, it's unfortunate as disposal costs rise, we tend to see more and more dumpings, unfortunately, in the city. Other communities, as they restrict more trash service in their communities, we tend to get the overflow of the debris here. I don't know what the answer is. I know that we've discussed it at length with the Beautification Committee. Councilor Thompson and I have had multiple discussions about what the best approach would be, and I'm certainly open to suggestions, but I really don't have the answer.
Do some of your employees, maintenance persons, do they kind of drive around looking for it, or do you wait until you get a call?
So when we drive by debris in a road, or if we drive by a dumping, we stop and pick it up.
Right.
There's no, it's the common sense approach, I guess, right? Because at some point we're going to get called to go back there anyway. Plus, the guys in the refuse department are pretty passionate. They see stuff, they want to get it off the road anyway.
Right.
So.
Right. Well, I appreciate those efforts.
Thank you,
Unfortunately, I think I'll continue calling you and Pat about it.
I'm sure. And it's unfortunate that people get nervous or scared to turn other people in, but sometimes that's the best thing for everybody. We've had it happen a couple of times recently. And we try to be proactive and work with people, even though they've done some egregious things, and most of the time it's worked out in our favor, so.
They have a problem with dumping behind the Kmart Plaza, but the owners recently got better cameras that can now pick up the license plates, word to the wise.
Yep.
And so it is being pursued.
The technology has come a long way. The cameras have become smaller, they've become cheaper, and more easily deployable. So for now, that's going to be our approach, to try to get those heavy dumping areas, but we welcome community support as well. So.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor D'Agostino.
Sorry, I knew I forgot something earlier. So on your personal services, there are currently 2 positions listed as vacant. Were those recently vacated, or have they been open for some time?
One of them was recently vacated. I have an offer letter out to somebody. I'm waiting for that person to reply. I had interviews 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
The other position I did not fill due to the budget constraint. I would like to fill that in the next fiscal year. But with the budget being in the position that it's in right now, I didn't think it was responsible. We've been able to kind of maintain service as is. It's really hard for me to say how many people I really need, because I currently have 2 people that have been on workman's comp for a couple of years. That certainly has an effect on my department. But I would like to keep that position in the budget.
Okay. Did you say you have a couple of people that have been out for a couple of years?
That's correct.
Oh. Okay. All right. Yeah, and then finally, and I meant to say this earlier too, I did want to, we were talking about dumping, and thank you for your support on that. We had, as you're aware, an issue that, again, went on for a bit, but finally we got the camera footage we needed to address it. And once you were able to get that evidence, you were all over it, and I do appreciate it. I know the residents in the area that was being affected greatly appreciate it, because that was those were neighbors in the area that I was talking to frequently about the issue. So again, appreciate your diligence and the diligence of your team.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's move on.
DPW Maintenance, invited Patrick Hill, DPW Commissioner.
Councilors.
Good evening yet again.
Good evening again. This is a very small budget. The primary role of this division, which is currently just 2 employees, is to maintain all the vehicles in the operations division of the DPW. You'll notice that there's a diesel mechanic in here that has been left unfilled. I do not have a job description or a union to put that employee in. I know I was in that same position last year. This unfortunately kind of got lost in the shuffle at negotiations. I respectfully would ask that you keep that. Unfortunately, I had another issue with another mechanic in one of my other divisions. I don't expect that employee will be back anytime soon, and I would like to fill that. And oftentimes what I will do with divisions is share mechanics. So if I do not fill it as a diesel mechanic, I probably would fill it as a motor equipment repairman. So I would have 5 mechanics throughout the DPW.
Questions, councilors? Councilor D'Agostino.
What?
Questions on maintenance? No?
No? Did I have my hand up?
Councilor Liles faking me out.
Oh.
Would you have a question?
Through the chair, you mentioned you had one during refuse.
Oh.
So I had marked you down.
Oh, okay. All right. I thought I had told you to disregard on that one. Okay. Actually, the question I would have asked, Commissioner Hill just answered. So I'm all set. Thank you.
Apologies.
Okay. Councilor Farwell, did you have something?
Just one, I was surprised that gasoline did not go up. And given the fact that prices have gone up, you had 380s 387.65 in FY '23, and you're only asking for 380,765 for FY 2024. That wishful thinking, or is that something we should know that hasn't been released yet? Or?
So, in prior budgets, and under the new auditor, we started tracking expenses a little bit more. A lot of the reimbursements were not coming back to that fund in the past. We've since reestablished that practice with the water department, the sewer department, the refuse department. So that fund has stabilized and actually lowered a little bit.
Okay, and do we know what we've spent thus far in FY '23?
The date. Gasoline. I do not have a year-to-date.
This was as of the beginning of the month. So 274 approximately, but just shy of $275,000.
Okay. And I take it it's under maintenance as opposed to a budget that would actually have moving vehicles, because you consider that maintaining the...
I can only assume, Counselor, it's been there since I started. I know that it has been in there for, I guess, the past 10 years at least, since I've been looking at budgets.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anyone else? Thank you, Commissioner Hill.
Thank you, Counselor.
DPW Water invited Patrick Hill, DPW Commissioner.
Councilors? The Water Division's responsibilities encompass a large range of tasks. They install new water services, water mains, water gates, repair and replace hydrants, respond to emergency calls, and address water main leaks. The Water Division also marks out services for utility companies and contractors and inspects the proper installation of all backflow devices when required. We also work in conjunction with Veolia Water to maintain and monitor and treat the waters, excuse me, in conjunction with Veolia to maintain, monitor, and treat water from the city's main existing water source, which is Silver Lake. Aquaria LLC is our supplemental water source, and it's located in the city of, or the town of Dayton. The Brockton Reservoir, which is one of our sources, has been taken off a line, and we do not expect it to go back due to PFAS levels. That happened in 2021. The Water Division scope extends to the maintenance and repair of over 320 miles of water mains, approximately 23,000 active water services, 3,000 hydrants, 5,000 valves, and we supply water to several neighboring towns. They also are responsible for the upkeep of 2 pumping stations on Oak Street and East Ashland Street, which maintain proper water levels at our storage tanks. These tanks include the twin tanks in Avon and Irving Avenue tank and the Cary Hill tank, all strategically located throughout the city that control the city's pressure in certain areas. They operate on a 24-hour basis with 40 dedicated employees divided into 4 shifts. Those shifts include a day shift, which is 7 to 4, the evening shift from 4 to midnight, and overnight shifts from 12 to 7 a.m., which only occur now from December to April. In times of weather emergencies, the Water Department also assists the Operations Division in plowing and sanding operations. We have a pretty extensive list of accomplishments for this year. I'll touch on a few of them. This year we were able to install 3 out of the 4 branded pumps that we had purchased last year through ARPA. They're being replaced kind of systematically one by one due to service, so expect the 4th one to be back, put in service this next fiscal year. We started the roof replacement at all 3 buildings down at the Silver Lake Water Treatment Facility. We began the construction of 2.5 miles of new water main on North Main Street, being replaced with 16-inch ductile iron water main from Battle Street all the way to Wilder Street and North Montello Street. we entered into an agreement with we put an RFP out for the installation of new water mains downtown to support the public safety building. New water mains will go in on Warren Ave from Belmont Street to Spring Street, West Elm Street from Warren Ave to Main Street, Frederick Douglass Ave, L Street, and West Elm Street. So that we expect that work to proceed sometime in the fall. We will be taking bids back on Thursday for the replacement of our granular activated carbon, which is used as the primary filter at the Silver Lake facility. We completed the phase 2 of our transmission main water main replacement and ongoing maintenance and infrastructure that we do with the city employees, replacing multiple 2-inch mains, repairing multiple water mains, repairing multiple water services. We also established better management practices for testing down at Silver Lake due to a spike in a specific contaminant. We successfully renewed our registrations for the water distribution system and expect to get those documents back any day. Those are the Taunton Basin and the South Coastal Basin, and we completed our resource management plan in collaboration with DEP, promoting effective water resource management of Monpont and Silver Lake. You will see significant increases in this budget in goods and supplies, which are due to substantially rising costs due to inflation. Funds for engineering a consultant are vital for this department, especially with the continued need to replace an aging transmission main and water mains throughout the city. Changing Mass DEP and EPA regulations, including the lead and copper rule revision and upcoming drinking water PFAS regulations. Also, the department is investigating hiring a consultant as the city's temporary licensed distribution operator. Mr. Creedon, who I'm sure you all know pretty well, has decided to retire and will be effectively retired on June 30th. It will be a necessity to have a distribution grade 4 licensed operator on staff. That requirement and expectation is that that person works for the department for at a minimum 35 hours a week. So I've been working with HR to try to get that position filled. I do expect that that will take a pretty lengthy amount of time, and I suspect that I will have a consultant have to fill that gap for a few months. And that's all I have.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and again, good evening, Commissioner Hill. Commissioner Hill, just going through the budget, I see that there's an overall 11.3% increase in the budget this year. What we are charging as our current rates, can it handle this increase? Like, what's the overall health of this enterprise fund?
I could take a step. Yeah. If you look, Counselor, at the overall financial overview on page 244, the answer to the question is yes. This current fiscal year, we estimated revenues to be $18.5 million, and as of today, we are currently at just over $19 million, so we're at about 103% of projections with the rest of June left to go. And as you can see, our revenue projections are similar for next year. We're able to accommodate a little bit of addition in spending because of an increase in retained earnings that we're using. As I've said before, I'd like to try to wean us off of that, but some of the cost pressures, particularly as you see in other contract services, that significant increase is the Veolia contract for the operation of the plant. And So I'm very comfortable saying that we have sufficient revenues to support the operation. There is a debt drop-off coming in the next few years, and we can take advantage, as we talked, about dedicating some of those revenues to debt service to continue our investments in the infrastructure. But for fiscal year '24, I think we're in good shape.
So there's no anticipation in rate increases in fiscal year '24?
Not in water.
Okay, understood. So we've implemented the $15 user fee, and that's been in effect for a few years now. When it was intended to be used for capital improvements, is that money being set aside, or is there a portion of that $15 user fee being used for general operations of the fund?
So it's all being used for general operations of the fund, but there is a portion of it, as you can see in the budget, of that going to debt service. And so what we anticipate, as I mentioned a minute ago, when we do have some of that debt service that's retiring, and we will be able to invest more robustly in the infrastructure and take on additional debt without creating more pressure on the rates. We do have that $19 million borrowing that's out there. In fact, there's activity ongoing right now as part of that borrowing that you approved.
Right.
That is seeing impact in the city's infrastructure as we speak.
Okay. Can we expect, just moving on to Aquaria, can we expect to see another submittal to RSF of Aquaria this coming year?
The intention is to submit the Aquaria purchase to SRF again this year, yes.
Okay. I see that there currently our Aquaria, both the fixed charge and variable charge, we're at $8.7 million, both for this fiscal year and next fiscal year. We generally see an increase in the contract amount every year. Why no increase this year?
I can answer that one. We have been, for some time, and I'm treading carefully with how I answer this question because I am not an attorney. We've been, for some time, in a state of contractual disagreement with Aquaria about their performance, about our obligations, and about their obligations. So I think there is a difference of opinion between the city and Aquaria as to what the value is of what they've provided under the contract and what we owe. And so those discussions are ongoing. I think we set this number for the budget for now because those discussions are unresolved. And just for instance, several years ago when Councilor Rodriguez was the mayor, we had discussions with Aquaria that resulted in some credits for the city. We believe that they're not fully meeting their obligations under the contract and have struggled to perform, which could result in financial benefits to the city. Is that fairly put?
Yeah.
Great, understood. When does this contract expire? We're currently in I believe it's a 20-year. Where are we in that contract? How much longer until we have to renegotiate another one if that's the right we're going?
So the contract with Aquaria expires in 2028.
Okay. Just quickly, you mentioned the North Main Street, North Montello Street, Phase 1 water main replacement. I know that's ongoing and underway. Can you just give us a quick update? Where are we in that project? Estimated time of completion?
So the estimated time of completion, if I had to guess, would probably be in the springtime for the installation of the water main and all the services completed. Paving would probably take place next fall. It's gone a little slower than expected. I think company that got the project did not expect to see some of the conditions that they see. Normally, they're a company from the Cape. Very capable company, but used to dealing with Cape soils and Cape conditions. So it's going a little slower than anticipated. They have all the water main basically installed up to Oak Street. They're currently hooking in water services, averaging 2 to 3 a day. Right now, they're between Battle Street and Ames Street. I would expect that whole portion between Battles and Oak Street to be complete probably sometime between September and October. Depending on the weather, we'll reassess as to how far along they get in the rest of the project for the rest of the year.
I would assume there's an expectation that they would cease over the winter due to the ground freezing.
It's not necessarily due to the ground freezing. The replacement job is an R&R job, so it's remove and relay. So the pipe is coming out of the ground. That means that temporary water is put up on top of the street. Those pipes freeze on the first cold day. So
because they're above ground.
Because they're above ground.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I appreciate that. That's all I have, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Councilor D'Agostino.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening again.
Good evening again.
Looking at staffing, you have, looks like a utilities hoist equipment operator that it appears the same position was open in last year's budget or vacant in last year's budget. So I guess I wanted to confirm that is in fact accurate. It appears to me it is.
That position is still vacant, Council, yes. And I can honestly tell you that I've struggled to keep positions in both water and sewer filled. Vacancies in other departments, oftentimes the guys in the water to sewer department will transfer. I'm in my second round of, I just went through my second round of interviews. I sent out 6 offers across DPW. I've already gotten 2 rejections based off of residency. I mean, I try to keep these positions filled as quick as possible, but it's difficult to get for the money, and with residency, it's difficult to get people to come in that have commercial driver's licenses. So,
okay. It does look like the other vacant positions were not vacant at this time last year, that those are new vacancies. Am I correct? There's an admin assistant 1, a dispatch clerk, and a utility maintenance person. Those are more recent.
So the dispatcher clerk is actually filled. That happened after the budget books went to print. So,
okay.
The administrative 1 position is vacant.
Well, that's a new vacancy from last year, is it not?
It is.
Okay. All right. I thought so. All right. And then the maintenance person, I don't remember seeing that as vacant in last year's budget either. I think, is that that's a new one?
That is a new one.
Okay. All right.
And just so you know, we took a different approach with the utility staff in general. What we did through, negotiations this year was combine our water and sewer employees to call them utility staff as opposed to individual water and sewer staff, which will allow us to kind of unilaterally use them across both departments. We did that with our hoisting operators as well. We're trying to develop a more efficient way because we have about 60 people in that building. We're trying to develop a more efficient way to use the staff we have.
Right. Okay. All right. Yeah, and I think I noticed it. I don't remember which one. You probably will be able to tell me. One of your budgets, it looked like there was nobody left, and I assume that's that moving around that you're talking about.
That's the sewer department.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've lost a lot of employees to the sewer department to other departments, and then I actually had a couple of people resign recently too. So.
Oh, geez. Okay. Also, you've got 2 new proposed positions. We'll start with Public Safety Communications and Technology Specialist. Can we talk about that position a little bit and how only looking for $1,200? Is that partially funded from multiple departments, or who are we getting to do that for $1,200 a year?
I can answer that. So that position is proposed to be shared amongst the DPW departments, the police department, the fire department, and BEMA. And one of the realizations that they've made collectively is that there's a need and an unmet need for a professional to be able to manage and handle radio maintenance equipment and the sort of break-fix stuff that occurs with all of those. And so it's proposed to be shared amongst all of those departments. So if you go, you'll see amounts in police and fire and BEMA and various DPW departments to support that. The business manager position you'll see being funded in water and sewer. It is what I would call the next generation of a position that was previously held, the incumbent retired, and it has not been filled. So although it's a change in a position, it is not an additional expense. There was a previous incumbent, David Norton, who fulfilled the contract manager for water and sewer. We're proposing to use those dollars for a business manager. It's a very common position in DPWs in Massachusetts. And because of what we've seen, what I've seen, what Pat and I have seen together, over the course of the last year or so, some of the challenges with billing that you're all intimately familiar with, some of the issues with reconciliation of some of the grants that may impact our free cash, the routine work of reconciliation of Chapter 90, which can impact our free cash. Evan Lacasse, who is a financial analyst on my team that's paid primarily through the DPW, does a lot of that work. But what we've learned is the Department of Public Works, through its enterprises and its general fund, spends as much as many small towns in Massachusetts. And we believe that the efficiency and the performance of the department could benefit from a senior level person whose responsibility it is day to day to manage those finances. Consistent with the wishes of the council for the additional financial analyst that we took on last year, the position is funded in the Department of Public Works and shows up administratively in my office.
Okay. So, if I understood you right, the business manager, it looks like a new position, but you dropped one position and are proposing to, I guess, put this position in its place.
So, yeah, the position was, the person retired from the position. It was different.
And you're not going to fill that one. You instead would like to replace that position and the funding therein with this position.
Correct. And it's the same funding. It was the water sewer contract administrator.
Okay. Mr. Clarkson, I'm hoping this is something you can easily do rather than me scouring through this entire 400-page budget document. Looking for the total salary of the Public Safety Communications Technology Specialist. Any shot you could give me that total number? Even if you need to put it together.
I certainly can, not off the top of my head, but give me a minute and I'll get that for you, Councilor.
That would be great. All right. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that was all I had. So if you can just, when you get a minute on that number, and then we'll be good.
Go ahead, Councilor Rodriguez.
We're still in water, right?
No, yeah, we're in water.
Okay. Good evening, Commissioner.
Councilor.
I'm going to go back to Aquaria. You know, one of my favorite subjects in the city. It's been like that since we first got on this council, and it's going to continue to be until we do something with this Aquaria. It's sad that 40% of your budget in your department in water goes to Aquaria. That's pretty sad. 40%. You know, without getting a drop of water from them, 40% of that budget actually goes to them. As the CFO had alluded a little while ago, we had a few years ago, hadn't renegotiated a few things with Aquaria, and they made some concessions to the city where we were supposed to get around, I believe it was 88 million gallons of water a year.
90 million, yep.
And some additional cash considerations in the sense for those bladders or the liners that they were supposed to use on a yearly basis. Since we won't require them to do that, they were actually going to give that money back to the city.
So that concession was made, to the best of my knowledge.
It's in a new contract.
It's kind of in trade for them to making improvements that they didn't feel were necessary within the distribution portion of the system.
But are we seeing any of those savings? That's what my question is. Are you getting the free water?
We see them every year. It comes off on a monthly basis. That 90 million gallons is factored into a 12-month status, and we get that credit every month.
No, because I see in the budget every year, those numbers keep going up and up and up and up, and yet where is the all this? Because we had to renegotiate a few things because they wanted some concessions made, and that was the discussion that we actually had done. But if it didn't reduce the cost at all, it keeps increasing in a way, and we are technically supposed to be buying less water from them, or they're not really producing any water, from what I had understood. At least a portion of the year or so, they weren't able to provide us with any water.
So
are they back on?
I think what you're talking about, there's a 6-week period that the fish spawn out in the water. One of the concessions that we made was that in that 6-week period that we wouldn't take water unless it was an emergency basis.
Correct.
They no longer deploy what's called a Gunder boom, which is a large netting system.
Yep.
And we don't take water in that 6 weeks. Part of that was that we get the 90 million gallons a year free. And the reason that we see the increase in the cost on the fixed fee is because every year the contract goes up a percentage based on the CPI. The past couple of years, I want to say that cost has probably been, over the past couple of years, about $1.4 million.
The mistake by the lake continues to come back to haunt the city of Brockton at an $8+ million a year. No, I just want to make sure that we are at least getting, we probably, I mean, we've talked about what we can do with the contract, can't do with the contract, but at least if we're getting whatever was promised when we renegotiated that amendment that they wanted to the contract, that at least that they're abiding by that amendment.
I mean, thus far, I mean, we had some issues last year. We've, through our law office, have started some discussions that's kind of gone stagnant. I do think that they're capable of producing their commitment now. I have not used them yet this year, but I do expect probably start using them in July. I use Silver Lake as a kind of like a meter. When Silver Lake hits approximately 20 inches below, I start taking 1 million to 1.5 million gallons a day.
So last year, did you get the 90 million gallons?
So the 90 million gallons comes at the fee, and the fee comes off every month regardless. So it comes off the fixed fee every month.
Where is that anywhere in the budget?
I'm sorry?
Where is that anywhere in the budget, though? You know, because I still see that we are budgeting around $500,000 a year to purchase water from them.
Correct.
And they're supposed to give us back 90 million gallons a year.
So we get 90 million gallons a year for free. That 90 million gallons has a value based on the variable fee. The variable fee is credited, the 90 million gallons divided by 12 per month. So it's credited every month on our fixed fee.
My question is, do you physically see that coming back to the
Yes.
state? Okay.
Yeah.
So you see that? So
it's on every invoice.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Commissioner Hill, speaking about Silver Lake, topic you and I are too familiar with, how many inches is it at right now, and how is it doing?
To be honest with you, Council, I probably have not looked at it in a week. We are out of the transfer season as of May 30th. If I had to guess with the weather, the way that it's been, we're probably at 5 or 6 inches below.
Okay. Is that good for this time of year?
It's average. You know, this early in June, typically we get a lot of water in May. The lake is full, or we've been transferring water for the entire month of May, so from Mont Ponce. So I would say right now it's about average.
Okay. That's good. Thank you. Anyone else on water? Thank you.
Thank you, councilors.
DPW Sewer invited Patrick Hill, DPW Commissioner.
Good evening.
Good evening, councilors.
Yet again.
I gotta put my glasses back on. This is
Home stretch.
in the home stretch. So the sewer division is entrusted with responsibility of maintaining all the sewer lines throughout the system in the city of Brockton, providing essential 24-hour emergency services. Their dedicated efforts ensure integrity and functionality of our sewer system, safeguarding the health and well-being of our community. They carry out a wide range of tasks to fulfill their mission. They perform preventive maintenance on sewer connections, replace aging sewer lines, install new sewer services. Additionally, they work with utility companies to mark all service connections throughout the roadway system in the city of Brockton. They also conduct inspections, install new sewer services, new sewer mains, and sorry, new glasses. They conduct inspections of new sewer services and mains for property additions, making sure the existing sewer mains remain undisturbed. They work in conjunction with Veolia for the upkeep and overall operation of the wastewater treatment plant located at 303 Oak Hill Way. This essential facility not only serves the city, but also extends service to our neighboring communities of Abington, Whitman, Stonehill College, and Easton, and in the near future, East Bridgewater and Avon. They oversee 2 sewer pumping stations located at Beaver Brook and Cohesive Brook, ensuring that they're functioning properly. They maintain 320 miles of sewer mains and approximately 23,000 active sewer services. Their responsibilities encompass the maintenance and repair of this entire network. Dedicated employees of the sewer division work very hard in conjunction with the Department of Environmental Protection to detect E. coli in drains, guaranteeing the cleanliness and safetiness of the sewer infrastructure. Moreover, they undertake necessary brush and tree removal and maintain the sewer easements. Sewer budget allocates resources for 21 full-time employees. These individuals operate on a 16-hour basis divided into 3 shifts, Monday through Sunday, from 7 a.m. to midnight. Additionally, the sewer division ensures that any calls and emergencies received between 12 a.m. and 7 a.m. are addressed promptly. With the exception of the clerical personnel, all the employees work out of the Utilities Division located at 39 Montauk Road. This fiscal year, the sewer division began through a contractor the cure-in-place piping of approximately 5 miles of sewer mains funded by the Mass DEP State Revolving Funds Low-Interest Loan and Principal Forgiveness Program. Also, the sewer division is commencing design for replacement of an existing sewer that runs under Route 24, which is a critical asset to the city's wastewater system. The replacement will accommodate future growth in this part of the city and offer redundancy for an existing sewer line in case of a failure. We also plan to undertake a biosolids management project at the city's wastewater treatment plant, which will significantly reduce the weight and volume of the city's biosolids needs. Currently, our biosolids, which is a byproduct of the wastewater treatment process, are transported to and disposed of in Naugatuck, Connecticut by Veolia at an annual cost of approximately $2.5 million. This contract for transportation and disposal is set to expire in December, and we'll be putting out an RFP for that in September. In looking at the current market trends, we expect the biosolids disposal costs to significantly increase under this new contract, which makes the biosolids management improvement project that much more important. The increase will likely require a supplemental appropriation, which we will file when the contract has been finalized. And with that, I will take any questions.
Councilors? Councilor Farwell first.
Just, Commissioner or Mr. Clarkson, where do other communities get rid of their biosolids? Just pick a gateway city or another city, because we obviously are not alone in this issue. But what do other communities do? Because I realize we're getting out of or we may not get out of it, we have that contract where we ship it down to Connecticut. But surely there are other communities that don't have to do that.
So I'd have to look, Councilor, but I did recently just look at a document, and I believe that 75% of biosolids in this region go to an incinerator. 25% of them are land applied, but 75% go to an incinerator.
You mean a centrally located incinerator?
There is no centrally located incinerator. There's no active incinerator in Mass that takes other people's biosolids. The only two incinerators that are active currently are in Rhode Island and Connecticut.
Okay. And for whatever reason, we don't go to Rhode Island because they didn't respond to the RFP, or?
It was based on the proposal.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam.
Just as a follow-up to that, Councilor, there was a discussion, and Pat and I participated in discussions. The town of Yarmouth on the Cape had a proposal for some time that they were going to construct a regional incinerator. And that proposal just has not moved forward, so that option isn't on the table. There is, and I'm just speaking from my previous experience, there is opportunities in some cases when you dry the sludge to landfill it, but there's also a significant decline in available airspace in landfills in Massachusetts. So that option is dwindling if it exists at all. We've actually had some conversations with landfill operators. I used to work at one in Bourne, and I have spoken to those folks. And so the challenge for us from a financial standpoint is that the options are dwindling significantly, and it's a very, very simple case of supply and demand. When those options dwindle, then those costs rise significantly.
Well, one of the reasons I asked is that obviously you can buy into the MWRA system for water, and I wondered if the MWRA, which services a number of different communities, has a program where they take care of the biosolids from different communities, and if so, at what price? And I don't know. It's just something I haven't looked into.
I don't believe that they do, Councilor. I don't believe that they have a biosolids receiving site, if that's, I guess, kind of what you're referring to. I know the big concern with biosolids now is PFAS. It was common to land apply a lot of these things, but in the past several years, I know the state of Maine, soon to be the state of New Hampshire, the state of Vermont, where a lot of the land applications were taking place, have since shut those landfills down due to PFAS concerns, which has pushed most of the market to the incineration.
I appreciate the ongoing study. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, you're welcome. Councilor Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and again, good evening, Commissioner Hill. It's one of my kind of similar questions about the health of this enterprise fund. When I asked about the water, you said not water, Mr. Clarkson. It sounded like you are not as confident in the sewer enterprise. Could you tell us what the health of this fund is?
Very perceptive of you, Councilor. I think that because of the topic that we're discussing now, the expenses are just more volatile, and we just don't know when we have to get rid of the biosolids, the sludge. It's a natural byproduct of treatment, and because those costs could escalate significantly, I just can't say with any confidence what our financial position is going to be 6 months from now. And Pat was transparent and forthright and letting you know that it's possible that we're going to have to seek a supplemental appropriation to address those concerns. The challenge with that is that our revenue estimates for sewer were higher than water, and looks like we're going to meet those. We're not quite at 100% in sewer for this year. So when we seek a supplemental appropriation, we're going to have to do an analysis to see what our revenues are at this point. And so that's the reason for my trepidation, that we just don't know, because of this huge unknown, what our costs are going to be. And that's what makes the project that Pat is undertaking for trying to figure out new technologies so important. And we're grateful for the support of the federal government to help us out with that earmark.
Right.
But that's a matter of some urgency for us.
And so when you're talking about potentially a supplemental appropriation, that would just be a transfer from some general fund line item to balance the budget, essentially.
I mean, I would definitely prefer that it not come from the general fund. That would mean that the general fund is subsidizing the enterprise, but therein lies the challenge. I think what I'll say to you very honestly is we have to wait and see what those costs are going to escalate to. And so we're at a period where we'll be looking at that. And, some of the potential figures that Pat has shared with me are pretty scary. We're talking, double-digit increases in these potential costs. And so before I can have a real in-depth and honest discussion with you about how much we would need and where the money would come from, we have to really know. So
right.
I think we should continue the dialogue on that so that no one is surprised when that issue arises.
Right, agreed. And I think from previous conversations, Mr. Hill, there's even a chance that the permit to incinerate in Connecticut would be terminated by the EPA. Is that correct, or?
It's always a possibility. Like I said, PFAS is kind of driving the Environmental Protection Agency, whether it be in discharge or through the air. So incineration, while they're not 100% sure, they think that it gets rid of PFAS, but if a regulation comes out and it does not, then it's quite possible that the incinerators could be shut down.
Well, then that brings me to, thank God we're at this time contemplating alternatives. And that would bring us to the, with the lack of better term, the dryer system over at the wastewater treatment plant. Now, we received a $2 million earmark from the federal government to develop engineering plans for this dryer system. Have we awarded a contract to draw up those plans yet?
So that contract should probably go out, Counselor, for the RFP sometime in July. We actually were on the phone with the EPA today to discuss that $2 million earmark. We have not received those funds yet, but we are progressing along with the RFP to get that project moving so that we can get it into design, whether it be a dryer in some form of secondary process or just a dryer.
And then you said maybe about a 12 months engineering time frame.
Yeah, I mean, give or take the estimate of a job like that, it's probably 12 to 14 months, yeah.
And then additionally, we would be putting any potential dryer system as a SRF request this year?
Another request, that request went in last year. Last year, we did not make the funding list. We were 8 items below the line. I have spoken with several people at DEP who have a strong feeling that that project will probably make the funding list this year. That project is approximately $35 million.
With principal or a percentage of principal forgiveness, and then a lifetime APR, within the 1% to 2% range. I think that that would be a godsend for the city because of the the worries and the trepidations that have been brought up regarding the cost to transport this sludge. My understanding is that we enter into this transportation contract every 6 months. Is that about right?
So the last contract was for 2.5 years. It was based off of 6-month increments, so that the contractor, most of the questions that came through the RFP process were concerned about the risk. Because the market fluctuates so much, nobody wanted to put a straight 2.5 or 3-year contract in place, so we do it in 6-month extensions.
And that's what makes this the potential uncertainty so uncertain. So why there could be in a 6-month time frame a wild swing that we're going to have to pay out to transport this sludge. So I think the fact that we have a potential solution, that we're walking the path of that solution, does provide me some relief, and I just hope that it all works out in the end, because to be kind of like Aquaria, a slave to a contract, it doesn't serve the interests of our city. And so whatever we can do to continue on with the engineering, continue on submittal to SRF, and really find a solution to this dire problem, that should be a top priority for this city.
Yeah, and I think, Council, once the RFP has gone out and we're ready to award and make a decision, that it would probably be an appropriate time to come in and talk to the whole council in a resolve to kind of explain where we're at, explain what the RFP has told us, and what road we're going to be going down.
I agree, and I look forward to that discussion. Thank you, Commissioner Hill.
Thank you, Councilor.
Councilor Minichiello.
I know I keep harping on this, but so far we're at $3,823,000 worth of electricity being used by our city departments without going into tomorrow evening. So that's significant money that if we could shave off some of those kilowatts, pennies, we could save $1 million. We wouldn't have to worry about that bio sludge.
And we are working on that report for you, Councilor, that shows all the different contracts we have and what those kilowatt per hour prices are. It's a great suggestion, and we will continue to pursue it.
Make sure you light up our lives here with the savings, Mr. Clarkson. Thank you, Madam.
You're welcome. Councilor Farwell.
All right, let me ask about the elephant in the room. Are you leaning towards a proposed or requested rate increase in sewer? Because as we talk about we up here, let's remember we are the taxpayers who eventually have to fund whatever we do.
I will answer you brutally honestly, Councilor, as I always do. At this point, I don't know. If we legitimately thought that we were headed that way, I would tell you that. There are a lot of variables in this budget. We actually went through, and based on the discussion before this body last year, you see some money moving around that's intentional to try to reflect those costs where they're actually occurring in this budget. So what appears to be some pretty significant increases is actually refocusing the funds to where we think they belong in this budget. But the issue of the sludge removal is a real wild card right now. So I can't honestly answer that question definitively, yes or no, but I pledge to you that we will continue the dialogue in public as the issue progresses.
Well, right now, I like both of you without a rate increase. Anything beyond that, I'm not willing to commit, so.
Understood.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well, gentlemen, Oh, Councilor D'Agostino.
Was there someone else that was before me? David. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, David.
I'll go after you.
All right, thank you.
Didn't write him down.
All right. There is, and let me just say, obviously, I'm sure it's been noticed that myself and some others have kind of been harping on the continuously vacant positions, just because it seems wasteful to year after year continue to fund positions that remain open, right? So that's why I keep asking these of other department heads as well. Working foreman appears to have been vacant last year as well.
So I just actually, Monday of this week or Friday of last week I just had a resignation that was effective Monday morning. So I do have a vacancy that's exists in here. I think the one that you're talking about is an additional body. I have not filled that position because I have I've had a huge fluctuation of the lower staffed employees in the division. To try to fill that vacancy with somebody that has absolutely no experience, I don't think is responsible. I've had a really, really hard time keeping employees in this department, and it's not because they're unhappy, it's just that they think there are opportunities in other places. So right now I have 4 offers out. 4 of the 6 offers that I have out right now are for sewer employees.
Okay. Is this, and I see you've got utility maintenance, and those 3 show as vacant, but those appear to be new. I don't recall seeing them in last year's budget book when I referred back to it. So those appear like they're new since last year's budget, unless I'm mistaken. I could have missed it.
I don't have page numbers, so. There you go. I think they were just classified as different positions, Counselor. So I had other...
Not new jobs, new vacancies, just to be clear.
New vacancies, yes.
In other words, in last year's budget, I would not I would not have seen these as 3 vacant positions.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Right, so they're new vacancies versus not necessarily new positions. I didn't word that correctly. But the working foreman, that is a vacancy that is a carryover from last year's budget.
That's correct.
Okay. So I just wanted to confirm that. And then getting back to the incinerator transport disposal. Now that, I assume there's some kind of a charge from the incineration plant as well, or is that included in this amount?
So that's for transportation and disposal?
Okay.
So those costs are set. When we put the bids out, the bids are for both transportation and disposal per ton.
Okay, all right, so there's no additional charge that comes in from the plant to then incinerate our stuff?
We were actually fortunate enough, we didn't have a fuel surcharge built into the contract either, so we haven't even been charged for additional fuel costs that had been associated with the transportation, so.
Okay. All right. Other contract services, it's a significant item with a decent increase year over year, 7 million-ish, right around 7 million, oh, 7 million, 700,000. Sorry. I don't necessarily expect you to go through everything that is in there because I'm sure there's several smaller items, but can you give me a couple of ideas of what those other contract services are?
So the other contract services is strictly the commitment to Veolia to run the AWRF.
So that's entirely Veolia?
Correct.
Okay, well, that was easier than I thought. Okay. Sometimes I can't read my own notes here. Oh, yeah, I'll get back to that. And then this should be just a quick, easy thing. Down the bottom of page 236, I assume this abbreviation here is treatment, repair, and maintenance, but per K, what?
I'm sorry, Counselor, I don't have, are you in the goods and supplies, or?
I'm sorry, I'm under...
Under debt service.
Yeah, goods and supplies, debt service, and then it's abbreviated, what I believe is treatment, repairs, and maintenance, but then it says per K, and I don't know what the...
Per K. What's funny? I have absolutely... I'll honestly, Counselor, that's... I did not even notice that item. Can I get back to you on what that is?
That would be fine.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. And then getting back to the possibility of an EPA shutdown of the incineration plant down in Connecticut, or anywhere else for that matter. The principal forgiveness and the low-interest loans that you talked about, and forgive me if you did say this, I just didn't catch it, is that a state or federal program?
That's a state program. This would qualify under the clean, they call it clean water. There's clean water and drinking water. Clean water principal forgiveness is 9.9% on the total contract value, and a 1.5% loan based over 20 years.
And then 1.5, 20 years. Okay. And the reason I ask, and obviously you don't work for the EPA, so you can't say for sure. I guess what I'm going to ask is, in your experience, your understanding of how they work, I mean, it would seem if they came out, set regulations that forced this plant to shut down, it's not just the city of Brockton that's in a whole lot of trouble. It's going to be the entire region. Are we anticipating that the EPA, are they the type of agency that would then have some kind of option or support or financing options for the municipalities who now have a very big problem as a result of their new regulations, or are they typically, here's the regulation, figure it out?
So being in the region that we're in, Region 1 with the EPA, it's hard to say. I don't envision that they would ever just unilaterally shut down incinerators and not give people plenty of opportunity to come up with other solutions. I know they're really pushing other solutions and offering incentives to being involved in other solutions. You know, drying is a great solution, but the drying product still has to go to an incinerator.
Right.
They're pushing people into coming up, you know, into new technologies. There's, you know, one that we had initially looked at, which is called pyrolysis. There's another, you know, organics to energy program that they offer incentives for. So there are other ways to treat biosolids after the drying process, and there are incentives to getting involved in some of those programs. Right. But it's a kind of a crazy market right now, and it's kind of a crazy area, and with the PFAS regulations being up in the air, it's just kind of a tough thing to deal with.
So it'd probably be fair to say there may be some federal or, you know, EPA federal support or options that we could participate in, but there may not be.
There may not be. I mean, we were fortunate enough. I know that they do recognize that there's an issue, and I think that's why we got the $2 million earmark to start this whole process.
I'm sure they recognize holding it is not an option for us.
And it is a countrywide issue. So it's actually not just this country, it's everywhere. And, you know, the people in Europe deal with it in a different way. I mean, other countries are, you know, they don't have EPAs, they have different organizations, but everybody around the world is dealing with the same issue, so.
Right, okay.
I think, Councilor, just to follow on with what Pat's saying too, that the federal government has recognized this, and one of the ways that the federal infrastructure money has flowed to the states, in Massachusetts anyway, is they have increased the amount of money available through the SRF, the State Revolving Fund. And so Pat is absolutely correct, it's state money, but some of that comes from aid from the federal government. And so the money that's distributed through the SRF has increased based on an increase in federal funding.
Okay. No, that's kind of what I was looking for, that there was some federal involvement, since their regulations are potentially going to put us in a situation where we'll need to find another solution, you know. Okay. All right, and you'll get back to me on that other item. That's all I have. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Councilor Texera.
Madam Chair, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Hill.
Councilor, how are you?
Good, how you doing?
Good.
Quick question with the position, the proposed position, it's business management and it's water and sewer. Can you explain to me that position?
Are you talking about the business manager?
Yeah, the business manager.
So formerly, Councilor, I had a gentleman by the name of David Norton. He was a contract administrator, so he oversaw a lot of the financing and a lot of the water and wastewater treatment at a couple of facilities. He was kind of, I don't want to call him a dinosaur, but he's kind of a dinosaur in the business. He had a lot of experience in both water and wastewater. It's not somebody that I felt that I could replace. He was brought on board initially because they were having issues with our water and wastewater treatment company at the time. We have since well, we're with Veolia, we've been with Veolia for a while now. We have two very capable plant managers. I meet with the plant managers once a week and have discussions about ongoing issues and stuff that's going on at both the water and sewer plant. I didn't feel the need to fill that position in that role after having discussions with Troy, considering that the position was already funded through the budget. We decided to go with a business manager, which I think Troy kind of opined on a little while ago. It's a common position throughout municipalities and DPWs. It kind of is a person who will look at rate structures, who will look at contracts and payments and, you know, auditing specific areas of the budget. I think it'd be a very valuable position for me to have and allow me to focus more time on things that I need to concentrate on. So.
Okay. Now, excuse me, back to purchasing service. Energy. FY 2023, it was asked for $24,896. FY 2024, you asking for $339,146. There was an increase of 1,262.3%.
You want to jump on this one?
Sure. We anticipated this question, Counselor. So as I was saying a few minutes ago, if you remember the discussion we had last year, some of the structure of this budget were vestiges of the position that we were just discussing. And the water and sewer budgets were constructed many years ago generally by the person who was overseeing the water and the sewer contracts. And what Pat and I together discovered in the last couple of years is that there were funds that were in different lines. And if you recall this hearing last year, we both had some difficulty in answering questions for you about how those funds were used and what the sources were. What we committed to doing was to go back and to really scrutinize the budget and to try to understand in a more thorough way how the funds were being allocated. And we've done that. And so you'll see the reallocation of funds in many different lines, some going up, some going down. We do not anticipate, frankly, that the energy costs are going to increase by 1,200% next year. But what we do know is that there is some volatility in this budget. And so the funds that are there represent an opportunity to be able to address funding shortfalls in other lines. And rather than tuck them as they had been done in the past, here and there and everywhere, this is an honest assessment of what we believe the needs will be for this department. So that's the best answer I can give you.
Looking at it, it's a red flag.
Yeah, understood, and we anticipated that, yeah. We're still in the process, honestly, of understanding how this budget's been constructed over the years and understanding what all these costs represent. And so rather than just, as I believe the budget was before, there was a little bit tucked here and there, we've done as best we could to dig in and really understand. And so rather than do that, this is honestly an attempt to be more transparent. And we understand that there's extra funds there. We do believe we'll probably need extra funds. And I believe it's better to have them in one place than to try to sort of tuck them away in different places. So that's an honest reflection of the volatility of this budget and trying to be open and upfront about what those costs may or may not be.
Okay. Consult. Last FY 2023, there was nothing for consult. This year, you were asking for $150,000 for consult.
So I expect this year, Counselor, to begin assessing all the sewer, I'm trying to think of the appropriate name from, they're not called transmission, but all the larger diameter sewer pipes need to be inspected. It's a very complicated process that has to be done by a very specific company. That cost reflects only 2 of the main sewer lines, but that is basically a price almost close to per foot to have 2 of the main sewer lines assessed through the city. One of them being the line that comes from Beaver Brook across the Thatcher Street landfill, and the other one being what comes from Cohasset, the Cohasset pumping station on West Chestnut Street all the way to the treatment plant. They're very large, 48-inch diameter concrete pipes that we obviously can't shut down to inspect. It's done through LiDAR, through cameras being floated through a process. It's only done by two companies. I had the price per foot given to me. I had the lines measured, and basically that's what the cost comes out to. It's probably closer to $130,000. So there's about $20,000 of money in there that I am not anticipating to spend, but give or take, it's going to, I wanted to put a little cushion in there just in case I run into issues.
You want to put a little cushion. So last year you did not consult at all?
No, I did. So every year we do some consulting. We have a general consulting contract that we enter in every year. And if I have to come back for, a future or a further allocation, rather than last year my budgets were, I think, double in consulting and double in engineering, I understand the need for transparency, so I'm happy to come back and ask for more money in those budgets as I work throughout the year.
That was all the questions that I have. Thank you, Madam President.
You're welcome. Anyone else?
I just want to ask a quick.
Councilor Rodriguez.
Mine is just, kind of quick, Commissioner. In the other contract service, I'm assuming that's Viola?
That's Veolia. Yep. That's the wastewater plant operations.
So is it just Viola?
Only Veolia.
Or maybe Mr. Clarkson, is there any way that we can, maybe next year, just label that as Viola so that we know where it's from, that it doesn't say other contract services?
So generally, the funding categories are determined by what's called UMIS, the Accounting Systems Manual. I don't believe so, but I will definitely check.
Okay. And it's basically down from 2022, but slightly an increase from 2023. When is their contract up, do you know?
So we signed a 10-year contract with them, I believe, 2 years ago. It's a 5-year contract with a 5-year extension.
So it's not, it's one of these contracts that actually goes up and down, or is it just, it doesn't have a fixed cost?
The fixed cost is based off of the amount of sewer that's treated at the plant. So the cost is pretty stable. Treatment generally does not go down.
And speaking of treating sewer at the plant, I know that several years ago we went into a contract with Stonehill to treat their sewer. Have you seen an increase or decrease in the amount of sewage that comes out of that college?
I would have to look at those numbers, Counselor, to give you an answer. That's based off of metering, so I would honestly have to dig into that a little bit more, and I could get back to you.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that, because we'd like to, especially since we're talking about the sewer enterprise being a little on the downside in terms of revenue. It probably would make sense for us to look into every possibility where we can get an extra dollar here and there, so we don't have to go back to the taxpayers or the rate users and ask them to to chip in some more, so whatever we can find it. And the idea is to save the residents of Brockton some, because they're taxpayers, they're paying taxes in the city. Some of these other organizations or towns, in the sense, they're not helping us in any way other than whatever sewage that they send, to our city, in the sense. So I think we got to look into that and see where we might have to adjust some things before we go to our own taxpayers.
So most of the IMAs, Counselor, that we enter into factor in negotiations and future expenses that are, outside of the normal treatment process. And based on the percentage of flow is the percentage of what they would pay their cost share portion, so.
Yeah, but because if we're dipping into our general funds to supplement the sewer enterprise, I want to make sure it's done across the board so that it's not just a weight that's carried by our taxpayers, because the funds that are sitting in the general funds belong to the taxpayers of Brockton. So these other communities are pumping their sewer into our community. One of the things that we don't want to see is the Brockton community subsidizing other people's usage of our sewer system.
I know disposal costs are, I'm almost certain that disposal costs are one of those things that are based off percentage of flow. So if 10% of the sewer is and it goes up 2.5 million, it's $250,000.
But if you can check those couple things just to see if the flow has actually increased or what exactly we need to. And when are they, especially Stonehill, when are their contract back up, do you know? Was it?
When is Stonehill's contract back up? I would have to look into that. Usually those contracts only expire for negotiation of rates. So I'll find out. I have the IMA upstairs in my office.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Councillor Farwell.
Just last comment through the chair to my colleague, Councilor Rodriguez. I think you should ask for a copy of the contract with Stonehill College. My best memory is, and we weren't here, instead of having 1 meter metering the outflow of sewage, they allowed them to put in separate meters, I think, for each of the dormitories, which kept the block rate low. And I, as a taxpayer at the time, I thought that was most unfair. But I think we should ask for a copy of the Stonehill contract and take a look at it. I'm sure the law department will have one.
Well,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, if we're going to go through this whole motion of looking into the sewer costs and what's coming out of what to pay the enterprise, we have to look at everything, across the board and see what we need to do to make sure we're not hurting the taxpayers of Brockton.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm happy to share with whoever needs it. I do have a copy of all the IMAs scanned, so I'm happy to share them through.
Yeah, that would make.
Through Google Drive.
Yeah, please.
If you were looking for them.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. I haven't spoken yet. I'm aware that the wastewater treatment plant is receiving deliveries from septic trucks that pump septic tanks, right, at households and businesses that don't have sewer systems.
Correct.
And I am aware that the number of deliveries has increased.
It has significantly.
Do we have any numbers on that, or?
I have not received the numbers from the plant manager yet. I do expect to get them by the end of the week. We have seen an increase in trucks, approximately 50 more additional trucks a month. Have been dumping septic at the site. Some of the trucks, from my understanding, were going to other facilities and waiting too long, so due to the long waits down in New Bedford, a lot of people are coming here as opposed to waiting in line for 2 or 3 hours. And then there are a couple of septic receiving sites on the South Shore that I think have been shut down. So I will get you those numbers as soon as I have them.
Yeah, and I'm interested to know how do their amounts impact our maximum amount per day?
I can get you all those numbers.
Yeah, that would be good. Yes, septic is a citywide problem. This proposed budget, and I'm speaking as much to the people at home, many of whom are in Ward 4 and will be calling me tomorrow. It's a citywide problem. This proposed budget
would increase by $2.7 million if it's approved as presented. And the annual amount, the proposed budget would be $20.7 million. So we spend a lot of money on getting rid of our waste. And of course, I'm in on the biosolids and evaluating everything, but I just want to remind the two of you civilly that this is a Ward 4 problem because the plant is located in Ward 4. We in Ward 4 have shouldered the odor burden of this plant and more for many years, and as recently as last weekend, right?
Understood.
So keep that in mind as we do stuff, and keep me apprised, because I have a lot of people to whom this matters.
Absolutely, Councilor.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Councilor Farwell.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, but you just opened up something. Are we required to take in sewage from these trucks?
That's a good question, Councilor. I don't know that we can deny septic trucks from dumping at the facility based on DEP regulations, but I could check and find out.
From any community?
From any community.
In other words, somebody could clean out tanks in Bridgewater or Raynham and then come up to Brockton and dump?
Absolutely.
We charge for it?
Oh, absolutely.
Do you know what we charge for it?
I don't know per gallon. I know that in the month of, and I can only give you figures without having all the facts in front of me, that in the month of May, we received $40,000 in septic receiving.
It just seems to me that ought to be carved out towards your biosolid situation, because if we're taking in more waste, we're creating more biosolids, and I think, unless my memory is fading at this hour, and I don't mean to hold people here, but if the cost going to Veolia is driven by the inflow into the wastewater treatment plant, because obviously more chemicals, more electricity, more work is required to process it, I just want to make sure we're getting a fair deal here.
So we get all of the revenue that's generated through the septic program. So we do get charged through the regular process, but all the money that comes from septic receiving comes directly back to the city.
Right, but of what we're collecting, Madam Chair and others, I think that's a resolve that ought to come in later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate it.
Anyone else? Thank you. Gentlemen, let's move on to our last DPW.
DPW Stormwater invited Patrick Hill, DPW Commissioner.
Good evening.
Last but not least, the most exciting budget. So today I want to highlight the important mission of the newly established Stormwater Department within the city. The Stormwater Department plays a crucial role in maintaining and managing the stormwater system, which has been in place since the early 1900s. 200 miles of storm drains, 300 drain manholes, 75 catch basins, and 488 stormwater outfalls. The department is responsible for ensuring the proper functioning of this extensive infrastructure. In 2017, the Environmental Protection Agency issued the city an MS4, which stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System Permit, which imposes discharge regulations under the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System Permit at the Advanced Water Reclamation Facility. Compliance with this permit requires the city to conduct multiple sampling events at certain points where stormwater enters waterways. These samples are evaluated for the total maximum daily limit established by the permit. If a sample exceeds the limit, follow-up investigations and reporting are necessary, which may involve additional sampling, CCTV investigations, and repairs to the drainage infrastructure. In fiscal year 2023, the Stormwater Division made significant efforts in an attempt to create a stormwater billing account list, ensuring accurate and comprehensive records. Additionally, the department initiated the issuance of stormwater permits for new development within the city, ensuring that stormwater management measures are implemented from early stages of construction. I would like to acknowledge the frustration with the stormwater fee billing rollout and the implementation of the stormwater permit. We intend on working together with city officials to modify the stormwater fee billing structure as necessary to be as fair as possible to residents and business owners while creating a revenue stream required to properly maintain the 200 miles of storm drains and meet EPA's MS4 requirements. I believe this collaborative approach can make this division successful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Farwell.
Gentlemen, thank you for your presentation. You'll hear more later, and I appreciate the overview. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Councillor D'Agostino.
Given that, as everybody's aware, there's a group that's been put together to dig into this issue, I won't go on too much about it, but I've been looking for, and I'm hoping perhaps Commissioner Hill, you can encourage the party who has this information to get it for me in short order. I'd like to know the stormwater fees. I'd like the data and the research that was used to determine what the fees were going to be. And the answer I got so far was the fees are in the manual. Yeah, I know the fees are in the manual. Where did the fees in the manual come from? How did they arrive at that's going to be the fee? So if you could help me, which obviously you don't have it right now, and I'm not expecting anything. The only thing I'm looking for this evening is that you will try and encourage the individual who would be able to put that information together to get that information together in short order and get it to me. That's really all I'm looking for out of this.
So how the fee was structured and where the numbers came from?
Not how it was structured, how they got to what the fees are. Like when it's so much, and forgive me if I don't get the lingo right, it's so much per impervious square foot. Am I saying that right?
Correct.
That amount per impervious square foot. Why is it that amount? Where did that come from? They had to have, did we pull these numbers out of the air, or was there some data and some research involved in deciding we need to charge this much per impervious square foot for stormwater? You know what I mean? Like, I want to know where that, or were we just shooting with a dartboard and, hey, that looks good, let's charge that and see how it goes. I'm hoping to God that's not how that was done, but I would like to see the data, whatever data research they have that they used to decide what these charges should be, you know, and it'll certainly help me as a counselor getting calls have a better understanding of why some of these charges are what they are, but also as a part of the group that is taking the task of fixing some of the issues with the stormwater ordinance, it will also help me and my colleagues have a better understanding of, you know, where we are, and also be able to have a better ability to get it right the second time.
Understood. I'll do the best I can, Counselor.
Why we're here.
Thank you. I appreciate any help you can get me with getting that data.
Absolutely.
Thanks. That's all I have.
Okay, councillors, anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilors.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Hill and Mr. Clarkson. And Evan and Tiffany. All right, do we have any other business? Okay, well, we will resume these hearings tomorrow evening at 6:30, Wednesday evening. And on Thursday evening, that's June 15th at 6 p.m., we will hold a public hearing for a half hour. The public is invited to come in. There will be a sign-up sheet at the door. You're welcome to come in and speak for 2 minutes, or else you can go on our website, which is councilcomment@cobma.us, to sign up to speak or to put in a comment for the council to read. There's nothing else?
We're adjourned.
We're adjourned.